Chapter 2500. Ha, that's not a sense of superiority, it's just that she doesn't have the confidence and has no choice but to lie to herself and pretend that she's noble. Alright, what's the point of saying so much to a disgusting person? It's just a waste of your saliva. Let's not talk about it anymore. I'll go online later and tell everyone about what happened today in the group chat. I'll let everyone in the class know. That's not a bad idea. Don't we have an alumni group? You can say that. Tell the truth, there can't be a single lie in it. Otherwise, you'll become a certain someone. More and more people knew about her. This was what Sun Ying was most afraid of. Just a second ago, she was still trying her best to straighten her back, but now her entire body was trembling. In an instant, all the confidence in her heart seemed to have been exposed to light and turned into bubbles. With a soft sound, it disappeared into thin air. Her confidence was gone, only a deep embarrassment. Her face was burning with pain. The fire in her heart was burning even more fiercely, to the point that the veins in her eyes appeared, and the bottom of her eyes were red. Just you wait, Yi Qian, don't get too cocky. She didn't dare to stay any longer. She gritted her teeth and turned the last of her foam-like confidence into a single sentence. After she finished speaking, she immediately rushed downstairs. Sun Ying, the days of neither living nor dying are beckoning to you. Also, take good care of the jade pendant, don't lose it. As she ran, she vaguely heard Yi Jian's voice drifting over. A huge wave of fear surged in from all directions like a tidal wave. Sun Ying's foot suddenly twisted, and in the end, she limped away. Go, don't be an eyesore in front of us. Get lost, Sun Ying, get as far away as you can. Seeing Sun Ying's fleeing figure, the eyes of her former classmates were filled with deep disgust. They were no longer afraid of what Sun Ying would do. Who would want to talk to someone with a completely ruined reputation? They couldn't wait to hide from someone like this, let alone talk about friendship with her. She had evil intentions and a vicious heart. No one dared to make friends with her, and even if they did, they would have to constantly worry about whether or not they would be killed by her. They did not have the mental fortitude of Yi Qian, who was able to calmly face Sun Ying's schemes time and time again. Yi Qian looked coldly at Sun Ying's back as she left. The students behind her looked at her, and then at Sun Ying, who was leaving in a sorry state. They all held their breath. One ran away like a stray dog. One of them was dressed in a military uniform and had a pleasant expression on his face. One was dressed in gray, while the other was dressed in military green. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. The two of them had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. One was in the sky, the other was on the ground. There was no comparison. Li Chuhai watched patiently. Seeing that Sun Ying had finally escaped from the encirclement, he pursed his lips and continued to wait. Sun Ying did not dare to take a taxi at the entrance of the courthouse. The sharp voices behind her were like knives scraping her face, causing her to feel pain. It was like a mountain pressing down on her, making it difficult for her to even breathe. She walked down the stone steps until she was out of sight of her classmates. She waved for a taxi at the intersection ahead. Soon, a taxi stopped and picked up Sun Ying. A black car turned around from the opposite side of the road and followed Sun Ying's taxi as it passed by the courthouse. At that moment, Yi Qian, who was laughing and chatting with his old classmates, suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the road. Just a moment ago, she felt a gaze sweep past her at an extremely fast speed. Even through the car window she could feel the coldness and chill. Chapter 2501. When she looked up, all she saw was a black sedan leaving. A black sedan. Yi Qian's eyes narrowed. Yesterday, on the way to the cafe from the Southern Province Public Security Bureau, another black sedan drove past the green belt. Yi Qian, what do you think? Zhang Na's voice interrupted her train of thought. Yi Qian didn't hear what they were talking about. He looked away and smiled. Sorry, I was thinking about something just now and didn't hear what you were saying. Let's go out together during the summer break. Is that okay with you? Zhang Na didn't mind. She was probably thinking about Sun Ying. Sigh, what a troublesome matter and a troublesome person. Luckily, it was Yi Qian. If it were anyone else, they would have been driven crazy by Sun Ying. The car had already left. Yi Qian secretly clenched his fists and smiled apologetically. My school has arranged for me to train during the summer break. Having a summer break is equivalent to not having a summer break. I'm sorry, I can't participate in the activities. Is that so? Forget it then. Zhang Na was a little disappointed, but she quickly felt relieved. Then we'll meet again next time. Let's go to the cafe for now. The rest of the students nodded and the group left in a grandiose manner. The villagers of Shuku village who hadn't left looked at Yi Jian, who was being escorted away, with mixed feelings. Who would have thought that an orphan who was beaten and scolded by Sun Dongqing every day would become so successful? Sigh, life is unpredictable. Don't bully others for being poor. As dusk approached, the city's street lights lit up. After parting with his classmates, Yi Qian returned to the Caesar Hotel. He sent a message to Xiaoyue saying that he was safe, then grabbed his clothes and went to the bathroom. The sound of water splashing could be heard. Sun Ying, who was in the most famous red light district in the southern province, widened her eyes in horror. She looked at the woman in front of her, who looked seductive even as she washed her hands. Listen carefully. From now on, you're Miss Ying here. You have to listen to whatever Mommy says. You don't need to serve guests tonight. You're so skinny that it hurts. Rest for a few days. That won't do. Mom, we don't immediately receive guests when we come in. We all start by pouring tea and pouring water. You can't be biased. A prostitute said in a sweet voice. Her voice was mellow and numb to the bone. The plump young woman, who was addressed as Mommy, listened to her. That's fine. Then, you'll serve them first. Waiters don't need to nourish their bodies. They'll start tomorrow night. Sun Ying's eyes widened. She could not believe what she had just heard. What did you say? Miss Ying serving guests? Who are you people? Who are you? Do you know who I am? I am. I don't care who you are. Once you're here, you're just a prostitute who sells your body and serves tea. The woman with heavy makeup laughed softly, her eyes filled with disdain. You still want to put on airs with me? Come, ladies. Tell Miss Ying who I am and where this place is. This was a place to indulge in a life of luxury. It was a famous place for squandering money. There were people who would spend a great deal of money here, and there were people who would drink themselves to death here. After entering this place, it was a paradise for men, and also a place where women were willing to fall. Sun Ying shook her head furiously, unable to accept that she was in such a place. No, I'm not a lady. I want to see Madame Li. I want to see Madame Li. She screamed and rushed toward the door. I want to see Madame Li. I want to see Madame Li. Chapter 2502. She's already here and she still wants to leave? Stop her. The woman yelled and her eyes were fierce. She's just like us. How noble does she think she is? Show her the tape. The two tall bodyguards pulled Sun Ying back like a chicken. They then pushed and pushed the screaming Sun Ying onto the carpet in the center of the room. A scene appeared on the TV. It was the scene of Sun Ying kissing and hugging a few foreigners in France. The unbearable sounds made Sun Ying rush to the TV like a madwoman. How could there be a tape of her here? How could there be a tape of her? Who knows how many men have played with her? Why are you still pretending to be a virgin? You want to do this the hard way? Keep a close eye on her. Starve her for a few days. The woman lit a long cigarette for herself and took a few puffs. She got up in annoyance and ordered the guards, train her well. She's mine tomorrow. After that, she left the room in her high heels that were at least 12 centimeters high. Sun Ying, who was locked up, banged on the door until her hands went weak. She didn't wait for anyone to open the door. She stopped banging on the door and sat on the floor. She stared with empty eyes. Tears flowed from her eyes drop by drop. Yi Jian, who was in a state of utter misery, could neither live nor die. Yi Qian, is this what you mean? Is this what I mean? I want to go home. I don't want to stay here. I want to go home. I'm not Sun Ying. I'm the director's daughter. I want to go home. No one listened to her pleas. Everyone was living their own lives. Who could control who? Yi Qian in her previous life almost went through this. If Yi Qian didn't realize something was wrong and immediately ran away, Yi Qian in her previous life would have been ruined by Sun Ying. In this life, Sun Ying offended Madame Li. Her days of suffering officially began tonight. Sun Ying would experience all the sufferings that Yi Qian suffered in her previous life. Ying Luo Sutra, Conduct Without Conduct. Then he asked Mu Lian, what is the conduct? Mu Lian by Buddha said, it depends on fate. Good will be rewarded with good, evil will be punished with evil. This was the retribution of evil. At midnight, the nightclub entered its final revelry. Yi Qian, who had fallen asleep at 9 o'clock, suddenly woke up with a start. The moment she opened her eyes, she could clearly hear her racing heartbeat. Lube-dub, lube-dub. His heart was beating extremely fast. He raised his hand and touched his forehead. His forehead was full of sweat, and even his hairline was wet with sweat. She was a little flustered. She was flustered for no reason. Yi Qian, who could not fall asleep, got out of bed and turned on the lights. Looking at the time, it was already 2 a.m. After drinking 2 cups of cold water in a row, Yi Qian pulled open the curtains of the floor-to-ceiling window in the room. Looking at the night view of the dimly lit city, she pressed her palpitating chest and pursed her lips tightly. This feeling was very, very bad. Both Grandpa Zhen and Uncle Chen had been seriously ill before. Uncle Chen lived next door, so he should be fine. Captain Xia, did something happen to Captain Xia? And Grandpa and Big Brother? No, she had to call and ask. Yi Qian felt her fingers trembling. She quickly turned around and walked to the bed. She took out her phone and dialed a number. She was calling the housekeeper who took care of old Master Fu. The housekeeper picked up the phone and stood up immediately. He knew that the caller was old Master Fu's granddaughter who had just been reunited with him. Soon, the housekeeper told Yi Qian that old Master Fu was in good health and had woken up very well. Chapter 2503. Knowing that her grandfather was in good health, Yi Qian calmed herself down and dialed another number. This was the first time she had called the Snowfield Brigade base. The soldier on duty received a private call. When he saw that the call did not belong to anyone in the team, he picked up the call with a serious expression. The Snowfield Brigade never received private calls. If an unknown number called, it would be blocked, and the other party would hear a message saying, "The number you have dialed is not in service." This time, the call was from a private number that had not been blocked. "Hello." The soldier on duty spoke slowly, as if he had just woken up. "Who is this?" "Hello, I'm Qing Niao. May I know if Q King is there?" A woman's clear voice came through. The soldier immediately switched back to his normal voice when he heard the name. It was cold as steel and had the aura of a soldier. "Hello, I'm Qing Niao. Q King and the others are not in the base. They are heading to a secret training area." Secret training? Then it was not a mission. Yi Qian, who was slightly relieved, asked again, "How can I contact him?" "Maybe you can contact him? I want to know if he is safe now." Was he safe and sound? Qing Niao called in the middle of the night just to ask about this? "We can contact him, but you didn't pick up our call. How about this? Call back in 5 minutes. Although the soldier on duty was puzzled, he did not ask further when he heard Qing Niao's tense tone. Yi Qian knew that the other party would find it strange if she called so late at night to ask if Captain Xia was safe. However, she could not be at ease if she did not ask clearly. "If it's possible, please ask Q King if he knows how to contact the Devil King of the Storm Commandos. Thank you." Xia Jinyuan, who was far away in a district, received a call from the team. When he found out the reason, he was stunned for a few seconds. "You only asked if I am safe? You asked for the Devil King's contact information?" "That's right. Other than that, there are no other problems." No matter how smart Xia Jinyuan was, he couldn't figure out what Yi Qian was thinking when he contacted the base for the first time. He looked back at where Li Jinyan was sleeping and said, "Tell her that I'm fine and ask her not to worry. There's no need to contact the Demon King. He's here with me. Everything is fine." Did she really call him in the middle of the night just to ask if he was safe? After cutting off the communication, Xia Jinyuan took a few steps forward and suddenly stopped. Such a situation had happened before. The little fox had experienced this before. When Uncle Chen and Old Man Zhen were seriously ill, Little Fox had given birth. So the reason why she took such a big detour to ask if he was safe was because she had this feeling again? Could something have happened to old Master Fu? Xia Jinyuan shuddered at the thought, but he quickly calmed down. That shouldn't be the case. With Little Fox's attentiveness, she would definitely make sure that the old man was all right. Uncle Chen definitely didn't have it either. If he and Li Jinyan didn't have it, then who else could it be? What happened? Li Jinyan's voice came from the front. He came out of the darkness with a start and asked in a low voice, "You don't seem to be well." Xia Jinyuan thought for a moment and told Li Jinyan about Yi Qian's repeated calls to him. He had no choice. He couldn't afford to offend his brother-in-law. Li Jinyan's heart jumped when he heard it. His sister's sixth sense was too sharp. If she really had this feeling, then something must have happened to someone who was related to her by blood. Chapter 2504. He was fine, Xia Jinyuan was fine, and his grandfather was safe. Then, Li Jinyan thought of a possibility, and his eyes suddenly turned cold. "My uncle, Yi Qian's biological father. What about him? Did Yi Qian?" No, his sister had no way of contacting his uncle, and even his grandfather could not. His biological father, and his future father-in-law. Xia Jinyuan's muscles tensed. "Last time, my third brother called and said that my future father-in-law had temporarily left the base. My father-in-law is the chief engineer, and my third brother is not in the same project team as my father-in-law, so I don't know how long he has been gone and where he has gone." Xia Jinyuan's voice was low and cold. "If all of us are fine, Devil, my father-in-law, contact the military. Contact the military." Li Jinyan's expression changed drastically, and he said calmly, "My sister and my uncle have not had the chance to reunite, and my uncle may not even know that she is back. Xia Jinyuan, please contact Commander-in-Chief Xia immediately, I beg of you." Suddenly, there was a clap of thunder, and it sounded like it was right in front of them. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, and the sentinels on duty looked up, their stiff faces dripping with raindrops. They were training in a remote mountain forest where there was a lot of rain, and thunderstorms were a common occurrence. The clap of thunder came at a bad time, and it made the hearts of the two top Special Forces soldiers tremble. Far away in a military compound in Beijing, a series of urgent phone calls could be heard. Ring, ring, ring. The sound woke people up. The Major General of the army, who was sound asleep, opened his eyes. Before he sat up in bed, he quickly picked up the phone and said in a steady and low voice, "What's the matter?" "Major General, there's an emergency. Commander-in-Chief Xia asked me to inform you to come to the Army Combat Headquarters immediately." The voice on the other end of the phone sounded very hurried. "Emergency?" The Major General's face darkened. "Okay. I'll be there in 15 minutes. After hanging up the phone in a hurry, he quickly called the guard. "Hurry up and arrange a car to wait for me at the gate. I'll be there in 2 minutes. As soon as he put down the phone, the Major General jumped out of bed. From dressing up to washing up, everything was done in less than 2 minutes. This was the capability and experience of a soldier. Even though he was now the highest commander of the Snowfield Brigade, he did not forget to be a Major General. When they arrived at the entrance, The car had already started and was waiting for them. The Major General got into the car and instructed the guard in a solemn voice, "Go to the headquarters as fast as you can. Quick!" The matter was quite urgent. The guard had been with the Major General for so long, and this was the first time he saw the Major General lose his composure. He replied, "Yes, sir." The car stepped on the accelerator and drove the Major General to the Army Combat Headquarters at lightning speed. 10 minutes later, the Major General appeared at the entrance of the Army Combat Headquarters. Before he could salute, Commander-in-Chief Xia stopped him. "That's enough, come in." His voice was so deep that the Major General's heart sank even more. Something had happened, and it was not a small matter. Standing here, he could contact the various military regions through military satellites, as well as the satellite control room of some secret military bases. He knew that something big had happened. The heavy door, which was made of special materials that were fireproof, bulletproof, shockproof, and shell-proof, opened. Commander-in-Chief Xia strode through the door, followed closely by Major General Yang of the Army. Chapter 2505. They walked all the way to the innermost heavy door and opened it. When they stepped in, they saw a huge electronic LCD screen. Below the LCD screen were countless screens that were about 18 inches long. The images on these screens were all dynamic images sent back by satellite. They were all top military secret. "Connect the images." Commander-in-Chief Xia motioned Major General to walk in front of a screen, and then said to an officer in charge of communication next to him, "Explain the previous incident to Major General in a simple and clear manner." After the officer saluted Major General, he said in a deep voice, "An Antarctic scientific research ship from our country disappeared from the satellite map on its way back to the country. After tracing, the ship appeared in this area." The officer pulled up a sea area. The screen was full of satellite cloud images. The northern latitude and longitude lines were intertwined, and the red and blue lines were dazzling to look at. After the appearance of this area, the crew sent back a group of emergency rescue signals. After deciphering, the ship was refueling at the Debisuo port. A group of unknown militants from abroad rushed onto the ship and forcibly took away 4 of our scientists from the ship. It is suspected to be kidnapping. The scientists on the scientific research ship were kidnapped. Major General Yang's face was already cold. So far, the kidnappers have not made any contact with our relevant units, and no international terrorist organization has claimed responsibility for the kidnapping. According to our latest information, our country's scientists are secretly being escorted to Mogadishu, the capital of Masili. How did you know that the 4 scientists were secretly escorted to Mogadishu? Major General Yang asked with sharp eyes. Is there any other situation inside? When the reporting officer heard this, he looked troubled, and his eyes fell on Commander-in-Chief Xia. There were indeed other situations, but this situation, there is a very important person inside. I just learned about it. He has an implanted tracker on him. Commander-in-Chief Xia took over the topic in a deep voice, and a bit of sharpness appeared on his military majestic face. One of the 4 scientists who were kidnapped this time is an expert in the development of our country's missile. He also has a very important document on him, which is of vital importance to our country. We can't afford to lose it. Experts in the development of missiles have always been national treasures in the national defense, and they also have a very important document. Major General Yang of the Lu Army even stopped breathing for a moment. This was a very serious matter. In order to ensure the safety of all science and documents, the Snowfield Brigade will be in charge of this rescue operation. Inform the Snowfield Brigade to assemble and order them to ensure the safety of all scientists and bring them back safely. Commander-in-Chief Xia directly gave the military order. The kidnappers didn't leave us much information this time. We need to inform the Snowfield Brigade to join the rescue mission as soon as possible. These are the identities of the 4 scientists. Take a look. Also, Commander-in-Chief Xia paused for a moment as he handed over the documents. Inform Yi Qian to participate in this operation. Because the expert in missile research and development with the important documents was her father, Chief Engineer Fu Yusheng. It could be said that this trip to the South Pole was a cover for him. Major General Yang took the documents and saluted to the Commander-in-Chief. He replied firmly, "The Snowfield Brigade promises to complete the mission. I will immediately inform all the elites to draw up a rescue plan to rescue the kidnapped scientists." Chapter 2506. Commander-in-Chief Xia was relieved that the Snowfield Brigade was involved. However, the importance of this rescue was extraordinary. Commander-in-Chief Xia ordered again with a cold expression, "Complete the rescue immediately. The Snowfield Brigade will be in charge of all commands. If there is anything you need from the military, just let me know. I will report the progress of the rescue to the leaders in the General Assembly Hall." The kidnapping of the 4 scientists had alarmed the leaders in the General Assembly Hall. Commander-in-Chief Xia's mood was a little heavy. These kidnappers had planned the kidnapping and now they could only rely on the Snowfield Brigade. "I will wait for your good news. Tell the Snowfield Brigade members that they are our hope. Please bring back all the scientists safely." Commander-in-Chief Xia patted the Major General's shoulder and turned to leave the command center. Commander-in-Chief Xia strode away. Major General Yang picked up the satellite phone in the Military Satellite Control Center and entered the code to maintain contact with the Snowfield Brigade. After about 15 seconds of connection, the red flashing dot turned green, indicating that the call was successfully connected. Major General Yang dialed Xia Jinyuan's satellite phone. A rainy mountainous area in China was raining heavily. Xia Jinyuan, who could not reach Commander-in-Chief Xia, was cut off. Just as he was about to say something to Li Jinyan, who was standing next to him, he received a new satellite phone call. He took the headset and pressed the answer button. The cold and sharp voice of the Major General of the Army came from the other side. "Q King, you have received an emergency mission. You are ordered to immediately lead a team to rescue the 4 kidnapped scientists from our country. One of them is a military scientist, the chief engineer of our country's missile research and development. The location of this mission is Mogadishu, the capital of Malaysia. The chief engineer of our country's missile research and development." Xia Jinyuan looked up with a cold expression. His straight line of sight seemed to contain endless darkness. Little Fox's father was in trouble. Li Jinyan saw his gaze and his already heavy heart fell all the way to the abyss. "Yi Qian's father is in trouble." Xia Jinyuan moved his lips. Li Jinyan's pupils contracted. "Something happened to Uncle." Major General's voice was solemn as he told Xia Jinyuan what he needed to do immediately. "The situation is serious. You will arrange for all the personnel involved. Once the personnel are in place, immediately rush to the military airport. I will arrange a flight for you in advance. I'll send you the relevant information about the scientists and the rescue mission on the plane. Remember, this rescue mission is of the utmost importance. The Commander-in-Chief has ordered the Snowfield Brigade to ensure the safety of all the hostages and bring them back to their homeland safely." "All right, I understand. I'll leave right away." On the other end of the phone, Xia Jinyuan frowned and replied in a low voice, "I'll leave in 5 minutes." Commander-in-Chief Xia was not worried about the Snowfield Brigade, and so was the Major General of the Army. Hearing this, a faint smile finally appeared on his tense face, but it disappeared in less than a second. "Yi Qian will also join the mission. She is a female soldier, so it will be more convenient for her to go to Mogadishu." Little Fox joining? That was good too. In this way, she could directly meet her biological father, whom she had never met before. The communication was cut off. Without waiting for Li Jinyan to ask, Xia Jinyuan said, "Red A mission. I will lead the team and leave now. You guys continue with the training. Don't worry, I will bring all the hostages back safely. I will also ensure the safety of my father-in-law. Yi Qian will also come with me. Chapter 2507. He turned on his glow-in-the-dark waterproof watch and quickly put it on. The helicopter will be here in half an hour. Bring me the training plan. I'll explain a few of the details to you later. I'll be taking a few of the soldiers from the Snowfield Brigade with me. The rest will stay behind and continue the training with you. If everything goes well, I'll be back in a few days. Sentinel, tell the team to assemble immediately. After that, he raised his voice and told the Sentinel team to assemble. Li Jinyan seized the time to finish what he wanted to say. The Devil King, who wasn't directly involved in the Red Special Agent mission, couldn't speak, but he already knew what he wanted to know, so it was done. Soon, the two teams of elites were assembled. Xia Jinyuan pulled out G3, K7, Z7, T6, V8, and J5. He simply explained that he would be away for a few days and that the training plan would not change. After the Devil King led the team, he told the rest of the team to go back to sleep. Although he did not say anything, everyone knew that there was a mission. G3, K7, Z7, T6, V8, and J5, who were pulled out separately, all had solemn expressions. After Xia Jinyuan finished talking to Li Jinyan, it was his turn to talk to them. He first said to J5, Red A mission, "Keep an eye on the training here." When they heard that it was a Red A mission, their solemn expressions suddenly became as sharp as a knife. J5 nodded. "Okay. Leave this to me." "Okay. Go and rest. I'll talk to them for a while." Even J5 could not stay. He turned and left. Xia Jinyuan said to his comrades, 4 scientists were kidnapped by a group of unknown people. One of them is the chief engineer of the military's missile research and development. He's a national treasure. The helicopter is also. He looked at his watch and raised his hand. His cold gaze swept across his comrades who were fighting side by side with him. They'll arrive in 23 minutes. Put on your combat clothes. Don't bring anything else. Leave immediately. Yes. The 5 of them quickly moved and left the tent. At the same time, Xia Jinyuan immediately contacted the pigeons of the Snowfield Brigade. After briefly and clearly explaining the mission, he asked his team of 7 to rush to the military airport. After everyone was in place, Xia Jinyuan reported the deployment of the personnel to the Major General over the phone. The entire rescue operation quietly, nervously, and in an orderly manner. After the Major General in the Satellite Control Center cut off the communication with Xia Jinyuan, he quickly called the Military Logistics Department. Please immediately arrange for an armed transport plane to be on standby at the Blue Sky Military Airport. After picking up all the combat personnel, fly to the vicinity of the destination, Mogadishu, to cooperate with this rescue operation. All weapons on standby, provide the best combat equipment, and prepare all the individual weapons of the Red A Special. A series of orders were quickly passed down through the Major General's phone call. The logistics of the Snowfield Brigade were immediately checked and all individual weapons, from big guns to small GPS devices, were prepared. However many people there were, they would be equipped with as many sets of equipment as possible. The team consisted of 2 shooters, 2 electronic countermeasure and explosives experts, 2 assaulters, and the team leader Xia Jinyuan. This team of 7 was the main force of this rescue operation. Because they were fighting overseas and there were 4 hostages to rescue, the main rescue force consisted of 7 people. The pigeons and the other 7 were also a support team. These 7 people were on standby and would immediately provide reinforcements if needed. Chapter 2508. At this time, Yi Qian had already walked out of the hotel. She received a call from the Major General telling her that she needed to participate in the Red Special Agent mission. He asked her to immediately head to the airport in Nan Province to meet up with her comrade. The night gradually receded. When the white light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Yi Qian appeared at the rendezvous point in a military helicopter. Xia Jinyuan, G3, K7, Z7, and V8 had been waiting there for a long time. Seeing Yi Qian easily jump off the helicopter and stride over, Xia Jinyuan's handsome and cold face finally had a faint smile on his face. He also strode over to greet him. He had to give his little fox a vaccination first. When Yi Qian approached, Xia Jinyuan suddenly reached out his arms and hugged Yi Qian tightly in his arms in front of G3 and the others. When he lowered his head, he could smell the unique fragrance of Yi Qian's body. His arms tightened for a moment before quickly releasing. After releasing him, he said gently, "Are you tired?" It was a hug between comrades. There was no other meaning behind it. Yi Qian didn't like physical contact between the two of them in front of their comrade. He was still a little conflicted when he hugged him directly. However, at this time, because of these two simple words, he instantly turned into nothingness. Perhaps this was the wonderful thing about love. "I'm fine. I'm fine." Yi Qian replied softly and glanced behind him. Yi Qian said softly, "Everyone watch. Don't touch him." Xia Jinyuan knew that she had misunderstood him. There was no other meaning behind this hug. He didn't explain. The gentleness on his handsome face slowly disappeared and became completely cold. At this time, the person standing in front of Yi Qian was not her boyfriend Xia Jinyuan, but the captain of the Snowfield Brigade, Q King. His exquisite and handsome face was as cold as ice as he stood face to face with Yi Jian. He looked at Yi Jian with a deep gaze. "Qingniao, the mission this time is extremely special. Although it's also to rescue hostages, the rescuers this time are all scientists from our country. One of them is quite important. You have to be mentally prepared." His words shocked Yi Qian. "A scientist? How could someone kidnap a scientist from our country?" Last time, the hostage rescue was a kidnapping case planned by the local triads in an attempt to coerce the Chinese company. This time, it's different. This time, they're targeting our scientists directly. "Qingniao, you can't have any emotional fluctuations if anything shocks you later. If you do, I will consider whether or not to withdraw you from this operation." This precaution was a little too powerful. Yi Jian immediately became serious. "Got it. Let's go. Let's greet G3 and the others first." After Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, he held Yi Qian's hand. Yi Qian was speechless. "Didn't we just agree not to get physical in front of our comrades? Don't be afraid. They all know about our relationship." Xia Jinyuan didn't even look at her. He held her hand tightly to prevent her from struggling and said calmly, "G3 showed me a photo of his friend. Ha, it was a photo of them kissing. Does he think that I don't have a girlfriend?" Yi Jian stopped struggling. A trace of darkness flashed through his slightly tensed black eyes. Something was wrong. Something was wrong with Captain Xia. Holding hands was not a suitable time for this. Why did he do it like this? Even when they were in front of G3 and the others, he didn't seem to have any intention of letting go. He still held her soft hand tightly in his hand. Chapter 2509. They had been separated for some time, and this mission was a severe test for Yi Qian. Arranging for her to participate in this mission was also a test for her. Faced with a mission, facing her family, facing life and death, the military needed to see how Yi Qian completed it. Did she complete it excellently? Or did she let her emotions get the better of her? This was the test for Yi Qian. When he held her hand, there was a certain meaning behind it. There was a change in her eyes, but it was only because he held her hand at an inappropriate time. As for the deeper meaning behind it, she probably didn't understand it yet. The Major General of the Army, who was standing in front of the big screen in the satellite control room, saw Xia Jinyuan suddenly holding Yi Jian's hand. He was so shocked that he choked on his water. Cough, cough, cough. He was so shocked that he started coughing. Commander-in-Chief Xia glanced at him. He had no choice but to cover for his son and future daughter-in-law. He said calmly, "Chief Engineer Fu Yuxing is Yi Qian's biological father." "What?" Major General Liu coughed even louder when he heard the news. "Yi Qian is a girl and she is also a woman. Women are more emotional than men, so the requirements for her to join the Snowfield Brigade are naturally stricter. This mission is the biggest test for her. If she passes, it will be more convincing for her to join the Snowfield Brigade as a female soldier." Commander-in-Chief Xia calmly explained his intentions. He was very satisfied with Yi Qian as his daughter-in-law, but he was also the leader of the army. He needed to be responsible for the army. No matter how satisfied he was with Yi Qian, he couldn't leave out any of the necessary tests. The Major General's coughing gradually subsided. After the coughing, his face turned red and his expression darkened. He nodded in agreement with the Commander-in-Chief's words and the arrangements for Yi Qian. He said, "I've been thinking about what kind of test she can pass to prove that Yi Qian is more rational than the male soldiers. I agree with your arrangements. It's time for the test. If she really passes this time, I can apply in advance and wait until the summer break to let her officially enter the Snowfield Brigade's training base." The Major General couldn't help but think of the last time when Yi Qian was escorting Qin Xiu and completed a joint mission with J5 and the others. J5 had suggested to see if Yi Qian could enter the base during the holidays to train with the other team members to improve the rapport between her and her comrades. Some time ago, Xia Jinyuan had also made the same request. Now that there was a contract that would allow her to officially join the Snowfield Brigade in advance, it all depended on whether she would seize the opportunity. On the screen, Xia Jinyuan held Yi Qian's hand tightly as they walked up to their comrade. The Major saw the unnatural awkwardness on Yi Qian's face and the darkness in the depths of his eyes. This smart female soldier should be able to see the abnormality of being suddenly held by someone else. G3 and the others were already used to this kind of intimacy. They were already numb from the stimulation of this kind of scene. Also, this mission was special. Q King did this to encourage Yi Qian. They really didn't expect that. Yi Qian's biological father was Chief Engineer Fu Yuxing. Now, as his daughter, she had to rescue her father, whom she had never met. When she found out, she probably wouldn't be able to accept it. "Last time, we didn't fight side by side and missed out on your wonderful driving skills. This time, we're making up for it." Z7 Han Zheng reached out and shook Yi Qian's hand first. The two of them shook hands like brothers and lightly bumped each other with their shoulders. The camaraderie between them was obvious. Chapter 25:10. G3 and the others also said a simple greeting to Yi Qian. Without much small talk, the group strode out of the military airport. There were still 20 minutes before the departure time. Xia Jinyuan deployed the rescue mission operation plan according to the latest information. At this time, his face no longer had the previous gentleness. Instead, it was replaced by a cold and serious face and a decisive and calm voice. "Our main mission this time is to rescue the 4 kidnapped scientists overseas. The military has issued instructions to ensure the safety of all hostages and bring them safely back to their motherland. As for the organization that carried out the kidnapping and their purpose, so far, it is unknown. Except for Qin Miao, everyone else has seen the information of all the scientists. The most difficult thing now is that according to the latest information, the scientists who kidnapped us are likely to be pirates operating in the Masua Sea. This is a group of criminals who specialize in robbing other countries' ships at sea. They commit all kinds of crimes, such as burning to death and plundering, and the weapons we bring from China will be handed over to us in another way. When we get there, we will act according to the plan." As he spoke, he took out a folder from the side and made a gesture of giving it to Yi Qian. Suddenly, he took it back and put it aside again. Yi Qian, who was focused on the map, didn't notice that she was memorizing the transportation route map of the entire Mogadishu so that she could use it during the operation. K7 noticed her concentration and couldn't help but look at her a few more times. She was memorizing the entire map. With her memory, she could do it. There will also be people from the Ministry of National Security who will cooperate with us. The General will send us the specific implementation plan and the information of the people who will contact us later. Xia Jinyuan's slender fingers slowly traced across the map. We will take the strategic transport vehicle to leave China first. This trip will span a large distance. China has several friendly countries. The strategic transport aircraft will leave China in the form of an exhibition and go to the friendly countries. The entire trip will be arranged by the military. After we arrive here, his slender white hand lightly pointed at a location that represented the jungle. Come down from here, where the local traditional clothes, and find a way to sneak into Mogadishu. Do you have any questions to add? This rescue mission was full of unpredictable dangers. The real precise combat deployment still needed to determine the location of the 4 scientists, understand the surrounding situation, and determine who exactly initiated the kidnapping. Now it was just a deployment of the route. Everyone shook their heads and silently told Xia Jinyuan that they did not have any doubts. After glancing at the silent crowd, Xia Jinyuan continued, "If you don't have any questions, please pack up your belongings and get ready to board the plane." Yi Qian did not bring any personal items to prove her identity. The Major General told her over the phone to leave all her documents behind and take a military helicopter to leave Nan Province. When Xia Jinyuan was packing his belongings, he seemed to have forgotten to give Yi Qian a folder containing the identities of the 4 scientists. When it was time to board, he gently shook Yi Qian's hand again and took the lead to walk to the strategic transport plane. The moment Xia Jinyuan turned around, G3, K7, Z7, T6, V8, and Yi Qian quickly followed behind him in an orderly manner. Chapter 25:11. After showing their IDs, the group of 7 hopped onto the strategic transport plane and began their journey to Mogadishu, the so-called capital of danger. Everyone put on their Adam's apple earphones as soon as they boarded the transport plane. Xia Jinyuan finally handed the folder that he hadn't taken out immediately to Yi Qian. When he handed it over, his tone was unprecedentedly serious. "Look good, Qin Niao. Remember, you're a qualified Special Forces soldier. You're a Special Forces soldier of the Snowfield Brigade. You're a female soldier that all our comrades admire. When you see who you're rescuing, Qin Niao, please remember that you're a Special Forces soldier of the Snowfield Brigade. After countless baptisms of blood and countless trials, you've finally become a qualified Special Forces soldier." Yi Qian took the folder and saw a flash of heartache in Xia Jinyuan's eyes. It was heartache for her. Hugs, holding hands, reminders. After receiving the folder, Yi Qian's heart suddenly filled with panic. She suppressed her panic and looked at the rest of her comrades. She saw that they were all looking at her with bright eyes full of encouragement. Yi Jian opened the folder and started flipping through it from the first page. When she reached the last page, she felt that her comrades were staring at her even more intensely. She raised her eyes and looked around. She received everyone's smiles. Those were silent smiles of encouragement. When she finally flipped to the last page, Yi Qian saw the photo of the last scientist. He was wearing a military cap, and the military rank on his shoulder was flashing. He was a major general, and his eyebrows. Yi Qian's pupils suddenly shrank. She stared at the military scientist in the photo. She knew who he was. Her heart seemed to have stopped. Even the rumbling sound of the transport plane seemed to have disappeared. She looked at the photo and looked at the introduction next to it. Fu Yuxing, 44 years old, married. The unfamiliar yet familiar name entered her eyes. Yi Qian, who was staring intently at the document, suddenly felt her vision go dark. She held the document and did not move. It was as if she had entered a state of meditation, and no one could disturb her. Fu Yuxing, the chief engineer of a missile base in the northwest of our country. His name is Qing Niao. He has information on missile technology that can boost the military strength of our country. No matter what the cost, we have to save him. It's the same for all scientists. We have to rescue them and bring them back safely. A cold and sharp voice sounded. Yi Jian blinked her eyes lightly, and the light gradually returned to her eyes. The black and white words on the paper came into her sight again. Fu Yuxing, Chief Engineer Fu, and her father, whom she had never met but who had been looking for her mother, had been kidnapped by a group of unknown people. Her breathing slowly returned. Lube-dub, lube-dub. Her heartbeat, which seemed to have stopped, also slowly returned. Yi Qian bit the tip of her tongue. A sharp pain came. The pain affected the nerves in her brain, and gradually cleared her hazy mind. After she finished reading, Yi Qian closed the document. She looked up. The expression on her delicate face was the resolute expression of a qualified Special Forces soldier. She was a qualified Special Forces soldier who was undaunted and calm in all situations. I got it. I'll listen to all the arrangements. She was a soldier, a Special Forces soldier who had been heavily groomed by the country. In the face of this mission, she had to put aside her identity as a child. Right now, she was a Special Forces soldier who was rescuing 4 scientists who had helped boost the military strength of our country. Chapter 25:12. The strategic transport plane was already high up in the sky. The Major General's video call was connected at some point. Yi Qian's reaction and her words all fell into the Major General's eyes. Through the screen, he looked at Yi Jian solemnly. Then, he turned to every member of the Snow Region team and said in a sonorous voice, Qing Niao, we have high hopes for you. We hope that you will live up to the country's expectations for you. Chief Engineer Fu is your father, and he is also an engineer of our country. Putting aside your identity as his daughter, you are now codenamed Qing Niao, and you will fight to rescue the 4 scientists. Yi Qian's gaze turned to the video call. She saluted the Major General and said coldly, Understood, Major General. Very good. Seeing Yi Qian like this and the calmness in her eyes, the Major General let out a sigh of relief. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who did not appear in the video call, also let out a sigh of relief. Good job. No wonder she is the future daughter-in-law of a family Xia. Her calmness and calmness have already demonstrated what it means to be a qualified Special Forces soldier. This mission is quite difficult for us. Everything about the enemy is unknown to us. Due to the sensitive identity of the 4 scientists, our country can't make an official appearance, so all rescue plans can only be carried out by you alone. In this mission, we will arrange for a local national security personnel to cooperate with you in Mogadishu. Later, I will send you the contact information and personal information of the national security personnel, who the 4 scientists contacted before they went abroad, as well as their more detailed personal information, will also be sent to you. Time is of the essence, we look forward to your good news. After that, the Major General saluted to his subordinate. We promise to complete the mission and live up to the expectations of our country. The 7 members of the Snowfield Brigade, who could not stand at all times on the transport plane, responded to the military's expectations with a uniform military salute. Soon, the most detailed personal information of the 4 kidnapped scientists and the contact information of the National Security Agency personnel in Mogadishu were sent to Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan sent a copy of the relevant information to Z7's military laptop for G3 and the others to look at. He quickly skimmed through the information and handed his laptop to Yi Qian. He said softly, Take a look at Chief Engineer Fu's personal information. His little fox had never met her biological father. She had even misunderstood her future father-in-law as a heartless man who had abandoned her and her mother-in-law. Actually, it really wasn't. Especially from this information, it could be seen that his future father-in-law was a loyal, dedicated, and outstanding soldier. Yi Qian pursed his lips and took the laptop. Xia Jinyuan said to everyone, "This is the relevant information of everyone. Take a look and memorize it in your mind. Z7, destroy all the electronic files after you memorize it." The Major General has already explained the difficulty of this mission very clearly. Mogadishu is also known as the dangerous city of the world, so we must be very careful in this mission. We can't afford to make any mistakes, otherwise we won't be able to answer to our country. Next, I will clarify everyone's positions for this mission. Z7 and G3 will be electronic countermeasure and explosives experts, team marksman, sniper, Qing Niao and T6, assaulters K7 and V8. These will be everyone's main operational positions. All the supporting personnel will be mobile and one person will have multiple positions. Chapter 25:13. The specialty of special operations was that they were flexible and did not have a strict division of labor. The identity of the main team members would not change during a large operation, but they would be flexible and cooperate with each other to enter the final battle location. Xia Jinyuan made arrangements. Yi Qian and the rest of the team did not immediately look at the information of the 4 scientists and the National Security Agency personnel. Instead, they listened carefully to his arrangement. Because this mission is a top-secret operation, I just said that the strategic transport plane we are on now cannot land directly at Mogadishu Airport. We still need to transfer planes to reach the destination. Then we'll take the jeep to Mogadishu, find our contact, and wait until we know about the abduction. We will make arrangements after we know the exact location of the 4 scientists and the actual situation. We need to keep in contact with the country at all times. Z7, you have to ensure that our communication with the country is smooth. K7, after you get off the plane, bring the emergency medical supplies and translation work needed. Yi Qian and I will be the vanguard in charge of security and clearance. G3 and T6 will bring up the rear. V8 will hide and attack at any time. If there are any changes in the future, we will make adjustments. Xia Jinyuan's battle deployment was always flexible and unpredictable. The more it was like this, the more it was obvious that the members of the Shuiyu Brigade were cunning. They appeared from one place and received news from another. Their whereabouts were unpredictable and full of mystery. If you have any suggestions for my arrangements, add them now. After Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, his gaze swept across everyone's faces, including Yi Qian's. Here, there were no boyfriends or girlfriends. They were just comrades in a life-and-death battle. No. After receiving a unified response from the team members, Xia Jinyuan said, "Hurry up and look through all the information." Yi Qian had already lowered his head and looked through the information of the first scientist. When she saw the detailed records of the scientists' interactions with people before they left the country, she saw something strange. The military suspects that there are spies among the scientists' contacts? Yes, continue reading. It's a suspicion for the time being. Xia Jinyuan turned sideways and clicked on the slide-down button. The white light from the computer screen made his handsome facial features seem to be covered with a thin layer of ice, making his expression look particularly cold. Yi Qian retracted his gaze and began to read carefully. Soon, he found Fu Yuxing's personal information. Yi Qian, who had never known about his biological father, finally had a detailed understanding of him. Married, widowed, unmarried. From this, she knew how deep her father's love was. She also knew that her father had never given up looking for her mother. Fate makes fools of people. They were originally lovers, but due to the circumstances, they were separated by yin and yang in the end. Yi Qian browsed through it carefully, while Xia Jinyuan read it carefully. When he saw Yi Qian analyzing all the scientists with a very professional attitude, A faint smile appeared on his cold face. "Very good, little fox. Continue on like this and complete this mission with such a professional attitude. When it's over, you'll definitely receive a surprise." Soon, all the members of the Snowfield Brigade finished browsing through the files. Z7 immediately destroyed all the electronic files. Xia Jinyuan said to his comrades who were preparing for battle, "Since there's still time, let's take a good rest and restore our energy. When we reach Mogadishu, we won't be able to sleep well. In that chaotic place, even if we lie down, we have to keep our eyes open. Otherwise, who knows when danger will befall us." After he finished speaking, he directly leaned against the cabin and closed his eyes. Chapter 25:14. He didn't ask Yi Qian what he thought about his future father-in-law's information. This was a personal question. Even if he wanted to ask, he would have to wait until the mission was over. Yi Qian, who was sitting next to him, closed his eyes when he heard the rumbling sounds of the plane. The two of them sat side by side. Their bodies would always touch when the plane shook. The turbulence outside was strong, so even though he was wearing a seatbelt, Yi Qian's body still leaned uncontrollably towards Xia Jinyuan. While hiding, she smelled the familiar fragrance on his body. Xia Jinyuan, who had his eyes closed, said softly in a tone that only the two of them could hear, "Sleep on my shoulder. It'll be more comfortable. No one will say anything. It's normal. Right now, we have to rest well so that we can carry out the mission better later." Yi Qian opened his eyes and looked at the man in front of him who made him feel safe. Then he obediently rested his head on his shoulder and fell asleep. The moment Yi Qian rested his head on Xia Jinyuan's broad shoulder, a smile appeared on Xia Jinyuan's face. "My little fox is becoming more and more obedient. Not bad, I like it." A second ago, he was serious, but now he was being mischievous again. Yi Qian knew that it was because it was resting time, and his comrades were all resting with their eyes closed. That was why he dared to be like this. After flying for a long time, more and more sunlight shone into the cabin. Other than the buzzing of the plane's motors, everything in the cabin seemed so quiet. The plane flew under the sunlight, and time gradually passed. Night fell, and only a few dim control lights were on in the cabin. Yi Qian slowly opened his eyes. Night had fallen, and it was time for them to get off the plane. "Q King, we're about to arrive at our destination." A voice broke the silence through the earpiece. It was the voice of the captain of the plane. Almost at the same time, all the members of the Snowfield Brigade opened their eyes. Their gazes were so sharp that it was as if they had never slept before. They had indeed fallen asleep, and they had maintained a deep sleep for the entire day. Xia Jinyuan tightened his Adam's Apple microphone, and his cold voice was transmitted to everyone's microphone. "Everyone, tidy up your luggage and change your clothes. Now, our identity here is a Chinese TV station's social investigation team reporter in Mogadishu. We need to leave now." "Yes, sir." An orderly response was heard. The seatbelts were unfastened, and everyone quickly changed. It was the same for Yi Qian. The lighting in the cabin was very dim. No one took a second look at her even when she was only left with a singlet and boxer shorts. The Special Forces soldiers who were preparing for battle did not discriminate between genders. 10 minutes later, the transport plane landed at its destination. This was a military airport of a friendly country. Our transport plane was parked as an exhibition plane. When the transport plane landed, Yi Qian saw a strategic transport plane of the same type, but with the words, "Airdrop Assistance," written in English on the fuselage. This was a transport plane that could head to the destination, and it was also a transport plane donated by China to its allies. "Quick, move the supplies." Following Xia Jinyuan's order, all the team members, including the captain and co-captain of the transport plane, were dispatched to quickly move the supplies. As Yi Qian arrived late, she didn't know what supplies were on the transport plane. When she saw an off-road jeep disguised as a TV station's news report driving out, she was stunned. Even a car was transported here. Chapter 25:15. The Snowfield Brigade transferred all the necessary supplies and equipment onto the transport plane that could enter Maso. They didn't stay for long before they took another flight and headed to their final destination. 3 hours later, everyone arrived at a spacious area that was about 2 hours away from the center of Mogadishu by car. It was a spacious flat area surrounded by mountains and dense forests. The transport plane with the words, "Airdrop Assistance," had completed its landing. Xia Jinyuan took the lead and sat in the driver's seat. Yi Qian sat in the passenger seat while G3, K7, and Z7 squeezed in the back. V8 contacted the captain. "Please lower the cargo ladder. Sit tight, we'll depart soon," Xia Jinyuan reminded his comrades in the car. As the cargo cabin ladder slowly descended, the only thing that could be heard in the entire cabin was the sound of the jeep's engine. The moment the ladder touched the ground, the jeep sped out like a wild horse. When the jeep drove out, V8 held the rearview mirror with one hand and left the cabin together. Mogadishu was the capital of Maso and also the largest city in Maso. It was called Mogadishu by Chinese people. It was a port city in the Indian Ocean north of East Africa. It used to be a peaceful city, but now Mogadishu was full of civil strife, rebellions, and wars. Everyone on the streets carried guns and terror filled the city. It was truly the most dangerous city in the world. They drove from the dense forest to the road. When the car drove to a small town, K7 rented an old off-road vehicle at a very high price. "You're so heavy, I'm going to be squashed into a meat patty." V8 jumped out of the car and stretched his shoulders. After moving his arms and legs, he finally relaxed his muscles and bones. Z7 bent over, stretched his legs, and twisted his neck left and right. He said, "You're not light either. My shoulder is going to be swollen from your weight." One car, 7 people, 2 in the front and 5 in the back. It was indeed a little crowded. There was also a pile of equipment in the back, so it was impossible to fit one person in. They had to squeeze all the way here. Yi Qian agreed that it was indeed a little crowded. This time they rented a jeep. Although it was a little shabby, at least they didn't have to squeeze anymore. Setting off from the small town, the 2 jeeps drove for half an hour before they were intercepted by a small group of local militants consisting of more than 10 people. Taking a closer look at the group of militants, they were all about the same age, between 20 and 30 years old. However, when Z7 saw their weapons and equipment, he couldn't help but curse. F***ck. The people of Mogadishu are too rich. Look at the things in their hands, and then look at the things in the hands of our comrades back at home. Today I finally know what the difference is. Indeed, for such a small militia, their weapons and equipment were all modern. They had 92 F-pistols, new submachine guns, and they were only short of an anti-tank rocket launcher. If they really set up an anti-tank rocket launcher, that would be a real headache. Whether or not they could get out of here was still a problem. Without an anti-tank rocket launcher, with only the weapons in their hands, they were not a militia, they were a fully equipped army. K7, who was responsible for translating, looked at the militants surrounding the jeep and said in a calm voice, "You guys stay in the jeep and don't move. Wait for my signal before you move. I'll go down and talk to them. If we can avoid violence, we'll try our best not to move." Chapter 25:16. After that, the K7 with a bandana wrapped around his head slowly walked out of the driver's seat. He used a very thick Maso accent to communicate with the militants who were blocking the car. Yi Qian, who was sitting in front, did not understand what he was saying. After he finished speaking, he took out an ID. One of the militants came out and took the ID. He said a bunch of things and then took the ID and walked back to the group. After a while, a strong man with a full beard walked out from the group of militants. He was holding a new type of submachine gun. He pointed at K7 and spoke arrogantly. The people in the car couldn't help but frown because of his attitude. Now, they were TV reporters and international friends who brought supplies to help the local poor. The ID that K7 handed out was similar to a pass. The militants should not have made things difficult for them. Yi Qian and the others did not understand, but K7 understood. Sorry, international friends, we want your car and the things in it. I'm in a good mood today, so I won't kill you. Get out of here. After his men heard their leader's words, they shouted even louder. K7 did not care about them at all. Although they had good equipment in their hands, their movements were rusty. It did not look like they used it often. It looked like they had just gotten it and had not really learned how to use it. Yi Qian also noticed and said in a low voice, "Their equipment should have been stolen not long ago. I smell blood in the air." Really? V8's interest was greatly piqued. His gaze was fixed outside, and after a few careful glances, he saw the problem. It's true. Left 4, the two young men are stained with fresh blood. So it was stolen. He felt much better. G3, who was in the back of the car, said calmly through the earpiece, "Even if it was stolen from a regular army. What are you so happy about?" That's right. This group of people dared to kill a regular army. What was there to be happy about? Outside, K7 said calmly, "We're just foreign reporters who are here to do social interviews and international friends who are going to help the needy. We don't have any bad intentions and don't have anything particularly valuable." The bearded man didn't care about what K7 said. He had just wiped out a military truck and looted a bunch of good weapons. He was very confident in himself. He directly said to his men, "You guys go over there and chase everyone out of the car. Remember, don't damage my car." As soon as he said that, 5 people walked towards the jeep with guns. Seeing that there was no room for negotiation, K7's eyes flashed fiercely. He put his hands behind his back and made a gesture with his right hand. He was asking if there was anyone nearby. Yi Qian, who was in charge of the front of the jeep, replied, "No one." T6, who was in the back of the jeep guarding the jeep, replied, "No one." They did not have much time to waste there. Since there was no one around, K7 made a clear gesture. "Are you really going to do this?" K7, who was standing still, spoke without a trace of fear. He said in a calm tone, "I believe you will regret your decision this time." The bearded man, who was wearing a loose cotton robe, looked like he had heard a joke. He turned to his subordinates and laughed. Listen, guys. Did you hear what this arrogant international friend said? Ha ha ha, isn't it funny?" Chapter 25:17. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone agreed. One by one, they raised the weapons in their hands and laughed. "Kill them and let them regret it. Ha ha ha, let our international friends meet God. I think God will welcome their arrival. Ha ha ha, to hell with our international friends." The bearded man turned around, raised his eyebrows, and revealed a mouthful of white teeth unique to black people. He grinned and laughed at K7. "Regret it? With just you international friends?" He pointed at his subordinates behind him, and laughed even more wildly. "See, these are all my people. We still have this in our hands." He proudly waved the new rifle in his hand. "This is very powerful. When I shoot out the bullets inside, ha ha, international friends, you will be so scared that you will pee your pants." After he finished speaking, his voice suddenly turned cold and he shouted impatiently, "All of you, get out. If you talk any more nonsense, I will kill all of you to meet God." A few black people with rifles opened the door and pointed at everyone in the car with the black gun holes. "Get out! Get out immediately!" The doors of the 2 jeeps opened. A black man wanted to open the back door of the first jeep. G3, who was being held at gunpoint, said calmly in English, "You shouldn't have gone through our things without our permission." Maso was composed of Maso and Arabic. English was not common, so G3 couldn't understand what he said. However, his calm tone made the black man angry. He walked in front of G3 and pointed the gun directly at G3's chest. With his naturally curly hair, he bared his white teeth and threatened, "Shut up, international friends who are about to meet God." There was a strong smell of blood on the black man. G3's gaze slid down slightly and landed on the black hot pants he was wearing. He saw a large pool of blood that was still coagulating on the shorts. Just as Yi Qian said, there had been a bloodbath not far away. He didn't say anything else and looked away. The black man with the large pool of blood on his hot pants thought he had won. He laughed and retracted the gun that was pointed at G3's chest. He didn't know what G3 was thinking at this time. After killing this person, he would disassemble the M automatic rifle that was pointing at him and turn it into a pile of scrap parts. Soon, G3, K7, Z7, V8, Yi Jian, and Xia Jinyuan, who were wearing headscarves, were escorted to the bearded man. They stood in a cone-shaped formation with K7. Standing in the middle of the group of men, Yi Qian's petite figure stood out. This group of Africans who relied on robbing for a living could immediately tell that she was a woman. "Hey! My God, there's a woman in there! Look at her figure, she's not bad." A North African man who was also holding an M automatic rifle in his hand, wearing a pair of old hot pants, his upper body naked, and a fresh scab on his face said to the bearded man, "Evra, a woman, looks good." The bearded man who was the leader also saw Yi Jian. He was not interested in the women outside, nor did he like thin and small women. Their Ma Sual women were tall and strong, and their breasts were as big as a cow. That kind of daughter was enough. However, it was okay to occasionally look at women from other countries. The brawny bearded man, Evra, walked over and pointed at Yi Jian with his dark, yellowish hand. "Take off your headscarf and let me have a look." Chapter 25:18. K7 stood at the very front, and behind him were V8 and T6. Behind them were Yi Qian, Xia Jinyuan, G3, and Z7. Yi Qian's position was very subtle. He was higher than Xia Jinyuan and the others, but lower than V8 and T6. This meant that Yi Qian was standing in the middle of the cone formation. This was the combat deployment formation of the Snowfield Brigade. When the black man called Evra came over, he walked right into the middle of the Snowfield Brigade. Everyone was held at gunpoint. In the eyes of this group of robbers, this group of international friends from abroad were the fish in their net. They could not run anywhere and could only wait to be slaughtered. Yi Qian did not take the initiative to pull down his veil. Instead, Evra pulled down his veil very rudely. A mysterious Asian face entered everyone's eyes. They had seen a woman with a high nose, deep eyes, and thick black lip. Looking at the fair skin and beautiful Asian face in front of them, the black men felt that this woman was not bad-looking. Evra chuckled. His thick black lips curled up, revealing a mouthful of white front teeth. "I don't plan to let your companions go, but I will let you go." His words caused more than 10 black men to howl. They were excited, crazy, arrogant, and full of cruelty. He turned his head and was about to give orders to his subordinates when he heard the woman's voice that was as light as the wind. "Is that so? Then we'll have to see if you can keep me alive." After Yi Qian finished speaking, he flew up and kicked the gun out of Evra's hand. This action instantly caused all the black men to panic. Before they could react to what was going on, the few black men who were holding the other Snowfield Brigade members at gunpoint felt their vision blur. After a sharp pain in their arms, they screamed. The guns that were originally in their hands were actually in the hands of the international friends opposite them. Yi Qian pressed a dagger against Evra's neck and said sternly, "If you don't want to die, let your subordinates throw their weapons to the ground." The blade moved closer to Evra as he spoke, and Evra could see a faint trace of blood. Sensing Yi Qian's coldness and decisiveness, Evra, who couldn't understand English and was sweating profusely due to fear, shouted hysterically, "God, what did you say? I don't understand what you said." At the same time, he shouted at his subordinates who were aiming their weapons at him. F***ck, what are you doing? Do you know how to use it? Damn it, be careful of the guns in your hands. K7's calm voice pierced through the crowd. My partner said that if you don't want to die, tell your men to put down their weapons. Otherwise, the knife in her hand will kill you. Oh, let me remind you that my companion is a demoness who likes to kill people. Do you really think we're international friends? K7, who was a forensic doctor, said calmly. His cold voice had a sense of eeriness, as if the Grim Reaper was whispering in his ear. His words scared Evra, who shouted, F***ck. Hurry up and do as I say. Hurry up and throw your guns to the ground. F***ck. Put down the gun in your hand, Colum, did you hear me? Put down the gun in your hand. When Evra's subordinates heard this, they looked at each other. Then, they heard the sound of guns being thrown to the ground and hitting the sand and rock. Seeing that his subordinates had thrown their guns to the ground, Evra let out a sigh of relief. He felt that he was a little further away from the Grim Reaper. He asked softly, Miss, do you have any other orders? Chapter 25:19. He didn't see one of his men secretly hide a pistol. He didn't see it, but the Snowfield Brigade members saw it. K7 nodded and said, Now tell your men to squat in the empty space in front of us. Did you hear what this gentleman said? Why are you still standing there, all of you F***king squat in the empty space in front of us? Evra roared at his men. When his men obeyed and squatted in the empty space, he showed a smile that was uglier than crying in front of K7 and said, Sir, are you satisfied with this? Evra didn't mind bending down now because he knew that he had to lower his head now, but later, it might not be the case. As long as there was a chance, he would let these international friends go to hell. K7 ignored Evra and said to his comrades, Wasn't Z7 envious of these people's weapons just now? Now they all belong to us, but I don't like the M rifle that was pointed at my head just now. I don't like it either. G3 felt the same and said, I don't like these people either. These people couldn't be let go. Xia Jinyuan locked the African in his hands and said to Yi Qian, Take him away from our vehicles and finish the job. This time, he spoke in Chinese. These bandits whose hands were stained with blood didn't know what language he was speaking. When he was taken away, Evra's eyes turned, and his heart was filled with anger. He realized that something was wrong. Especially when he saw an international friend who was taller than him step on the weapon that he took so much effort to snatch, Evra's heart was filled with unbearable pain. These weapons in front of him were created after countless brushes with death, but these people didn't care about them at all. Wait, what are they doing? Evra, who had a knife at his neck, was forced to step back, and his face was filled with fear. K7 said in Maso, Step back, don't pick up the weapon in your hands. Evra felt the aura of death. Just as Yi Qian retreated, the dagger was slightly away from his neck. Evra resisted. The African who was hiding a gun behind his waist suddenly pulled out his gun and fired at the K7 at the front. Bang! Gunshots rang out, and the life of this group of bandits, who specialized in robbing passers-by for a living, entered the countdown. The black man who fired first didn't have a second chance to fire. After killing his comrade, he was hit in the head by a bullet from the K7's pistol. Bang! The Maso bandit, who wasn't very tall, even looked a little skinny, fell to the ground with a bang. Red blood and white brain matter flowed out from the back of his head. The subshot was of a small caliber, so the entrance wound was small. However, when the bullet passed through the brain, it twisted the skull and crushed the tissue before spinning out. The exit wound was about the size of a walnut. Yi Qian's dagger slashed at Evra's throat. His movements were very fast, and like lightning, He took care of this bandit who was still thinking about killing him. Evra didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to escape from the hands of a woman. The pain from his neck made his eyes widen, and he felt liquid rushing out from the side of his neck. Goo! 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 He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. There was only a goo-goo sound, and soon, even the goo-goo sound disappeared. Chapter 25:20. His larynx was cut and his arteries were severed. The gurgling sound was the last thing he made. His dark hands covered his neck. He stared in horror, trying to stop the blood from gushing out, but it was no use. God, he was going to meet God. The fear in his eyes grew. Iphyra collapsed to the ground. His hand was still clutching his neck, and he could not stop the blood from flowing out. His breath gradually faded and his pupils dilated. This bandit had never thought that he would die in the hands of a woman, let alone a foreign woman. Yi Qian had already rolled into the bushes by the side of the road. At the same time, she took away the rifle that Evra had pointed at her. The only way to deal with these bandits was to massacre them. The gunshots that frightened the civilians lasted for 5 minutes. There was a strong smell of blood in the smoke. The members of the Snowfield Brigade walked out from both sides of the road and glanced coldly at the dead bandit. V8 said, "It really is the Danger City. We haven't even entered and we've already started a battle. Pirates and bandit groups are the hallmarks of Maso. Drug on 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 drug off." Xia Jinyuan picked up an rifle and said, "It's a military rifle. These people must have killed a group of Maso's regular army not long ago. Pick up all the weapons and guns and find a place to dispose of them." No matter how good the weapon was, they couldn't accept it, especially since it might have come from a regular soldier. One by one, the weapons began to be moved into the jeep at the back. There were 2 Defei bandits who had been shot, but they were still hanging on to their last breath. They watched these people move the weapons that they had risked their lives to get into the jeep. In the end, they breathed their last unwillingly. "Q King, the weapons have been moved to the car. What should we do with these people?" V8 pointed at the bandit. To them, a bloody battlefield was just like that. A battlefield was a place where you had to fight to the death. Mercy and compassion should not be involved. "Throw it aside," Xia Jinyuan replied indifferently. "Clean up the scene in 5 minutes." On the other side, Z7 was standing in front of the bandit leader, Evra. He stared at him coldly and sighed. "My comrade said that you would regret it. You could have settled this peacefully and gone your separate ways. Why did you have to use such a method? You still want to keep my comrade? Now you don't even have the chance to regret it." When Xia Jinyuan saw Z7 mumbling to himself, he walked over and glanced at him. "Chanting scriptures? Get to work. No, tell him he made the wrong decision. He won't have the chance to regret it even if he wants to," Z7 said as he shook his head. Then, he bent down and dragged Evra's legs towards the bushes. A trail of blood was left on the ground. 5 minutes later, the scene was cleaned up, except for pools of blood that could not be wiped away. Get in, get in." V8 raised his hand and jumped into the jeep behind him. Xia Jinyuan had already gotten in and started the car. The jeep sped away, leaving behind a trail of dust and blood. After driving for less than 2 kilometers, they found streaks of dried blood and bullet casings scattered around. This was the place where the bandits had exchanged gunfire. The car did not stop and sped past. Yi Qian's gaze fell on a small figure lying in the bushes. That was the figure of a child lying there motionless. At that moment, Yi Qian's heart sank. Chapter 25:21. Don't look. Xia Jinyuan, who was driving, spoke in a cold and calm voice. The civil war in Maso has been going on for a long time, so it's very common to see children on the road. Along the way, you won't see one or two, you might see countless of them. Yi Qian responded with a low indicating that she understood. You will face even more tragic situations in the future, Qing Niao. When you go abroad, especially in a war-torn country, you can't trust even a 3-year-old child, understand? Xia Jinyuan, who was driving, glanced at her with a sharp and ruthless gaze. The glaring sunlight outside reflected into his pupils. Yi Qian turned her head slightly and saw the coldness in his eyes that was whiter than the sun. Remember, kindness doesn't exist all the time. Kindness can only be shown at the right time and in the right environment. Z7, who was sitting in the back, was communicating with the country. When he heard this, he said solemnly, Q King is right. I once saw a 3-year-old child with a suicide bomb wrapped around his body. He rushed into a refugee camp and told the person who took him in that he was hungry and needed something to eat. In the end, the person who took him in, who was also the closest person to him, became the first person to die in the suicide bomb. It wasn't the child's fault. They were too naive to know how to take advantage of others. The child was indeed hungry, but he didn't know that he was carrying a powerful and lethal bomb. But the crazy criminals took advantage of their naivety, young age, and ignorance, and finally became a seemingly harmless mobile bomb. After nearly 2 hours of driving, Xia Jinyuan and the others finally arrived at the center of Mogadishu. The streets were full of people armed with guns and ammunition. Both sides of the road were in ruins, and it was difficult to see any buildings that were intact. The rain-like bullet holes on the walls seemed to show the passers-by the trauma caused by the war. Even the members of the Snowfield Brigade, who often carried out missions outside, couldn't help but feel touched when they saw this scene. If the government of a country didn't do anything, then the ones who would be hurt would only be the working people living at the bottom. If the working people at the bottom were living in water and fire, then there would be no value and meaning for the country to exist. Although the city was dilapidated during the day, it was bustling with people. If it weren't for the ruins and bullet holes that told the Snowfield Brigade that the city was dangerous, they wouldn't have been able to tell that it was dangerous. Prosperity, decline, suffering, sin, wealth, poverty. You can see 2 extremes here. Xia Jinyuan parked his car at the entrance of a relatively good hotel. His cold voice was filled with the calmness of a war-torn country. This is a war-torn country, Qing Niao. Take a good look. In the end, he reminded Yi Qian not to bring the peace he had seen in his country to a country that was full of danger and could erupt into a gunfight at any time. Otherwise, you'll end up in a miserable state. With his hand on the door lock, Yi Qian, who was about to get out of the car, sat back in the passenger seat and said solemnly to Xia Jinyuan, Understood. In a war-torn country, people lived for their desires and fought for their desires. Whoever had the upper hand had the most power, and the more power they had, the more they couldn't tolerate others. The flames of war were endless, and they would fight to the death. Xia Jinyuan looked at her for a long time, and after confirming that there were no other impurities in her eyes, he turned on the headset and said, Yi Qian and I will go to the hotel first and book a room. The 5 of you get out of the car and walk around to understand the situation. Remember to bring a pistol and keep in touch. Chapter 25-22. Everyone got out of the car at Xia Jinyuan's command, except for Yi Qian, who was stopped by Xia Jinyuan. He slammed the car door shut and jogged around the front of the car to the passenger seat. As he ran, he put on a pair of sunglasses, opened the car door, and extended his left hand. His actions were gentlemanly, and his deep eyes behind the sunglasses were cold. He said, Ma, you should be the one getting out of the car with my help. Yi Qian knew that he was pretending to be someone else by using gentlemanly actions to hide his fierce temperament. He wrapped a large floral scarf around his head to cover his face and put on a pair of sunglasses. At first glance, he really didn't look like a Chinese man, nor did he look like the Captain Xia she knew. Yi Qian looked at the left hand that was extended to her. She cooperated well with him, revealing her feminine arrogance. She only cooperated with him with her words and expression, but not her body. So gentlemanly? Unfortunately, I'm not a delicate princess. Sorry, I don't need your help. As she spoke, she slapped away Xia Jinyuan's left hand and got out of the car. He didn't look like he was just holding her hand. He looked like he would carry her out of the car at any time. Yi Qian, who was shy, knew that this was a disguise, but she could also choose to cooperate with him in a way that showed her feminine arrogance. Just like now. She slapped his hand away, walked past him, and walked towards the hotel entrance with her chin slightly raised. This sudden change of events was quite exciting. Her comrades who were watching all thought that Qing Niao would definitely cooperate with Q King in disguise. Who knew that she would use an even better method to let them see Q King being humiliated? In front of them, Yi Qian said calmly, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and follow me." He had a very authentic American accent. In the end, Z7 couldn't hold it in and laughed out loud in a low voice. Xia Jinyuan clapped his hands and said casually, "Okay, you guys keep an eye on the surroundings. Yi Qian and I will go in first." Then he quickly caught up with Yi Qian and pulled him towards the entrance of the hotel. This time, Yi Jian did not push his hand away. She had cooperated with Xia Jinyuan to carry out so many missions outside. She knew when to joke and when to cooperate with Xia Jinyuan to put on a disguise. Yi Jian had a good sense of propriety in this aspect. Earlier, no one was paying attention to her, so she did not cooperate. Now that she had barged into the sights of some people, she naturally had to cooperate. She looked around the hotel, and was surprised to find that there was no standard waiter at the door. Because it was a war-torn country, they didn't even hire waiters? Yi Jian, who was thinking casually, followed Xia Jinyuan through the brightly polished glass door and walked into the rustic-styled hotel lobby. At the front desk of the hotel was a tall, handsome Caucasian guy with blue eyes and blonde hair. It was rare to see Caucasians in a country like North Africa. When the guy saw Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian, he did not greet them in North African language. Instead, he asked in a standard London accent, "Excuse me, is there anything I can help you with?" Xia Jinyuan, who was wearing sunglasses, leaned against the front desk and elegantly took off his sunglasses. He smiled and asked in an authentic American accent, "Excuse me, do you have a suite here? We want the best suite." A young African man in sportswear, who looked like a waiter but not a waiter, came in from outside. He walked straight to the front desk and said a few words to the handsome Caucasian guy at the front desk in Allah. Yi Qian couldn't understand Maso, Allah. Chapter 25-23. However, Xia Jinyuan understood Arabic. The young African said, "They are from the TV station, International Friends who support poor families. They should be very rich. I saw that there were people in their car." The handsome white guy nodded and signaled for the African to leave. He then apologized politely and enthusiastically, "I'm sorry, our staff told me that you have 2 more cars here. We also have a suite here. How many rooms do you want? If you stay in our hotel, your car can be driven into our hotel. Trust me, if you stay in our hotel, you and your friends will be safe. Give me a 3-room suite. It would be better if you have one facing the street. I like to see the scenery outside." "Thank you." Xia Jinyuan was like a tourist who lived in Masa all year round, talking about the city's scenery. The handsome white guy politely communicated with Xia Jinyuan. After confirming that the guest needed a 3-room suite, he quickly booked a suite facing the street on the 4th floor. Xia Jinyuan took the room card from the handsome guy and gave it to Yi Qian. He leaned against the front desk and turned to face the door lazily. "Our car needs to be driven into the hotel." "No problem, sir." The white guy picked up a walkie-talkie and asked the hotel staff to come out and lead the guest into the hotel's parking lot. After everything was arranged, the white guy said politely, "I hope you have a good time in Moscow. If you need any bodyguard services or other special services, please contact us at any time using the walkie-talkie in the room." In a city with constant civil strife, even basic communication was not guaranteed. The walkie-talkie was a better way to communicate. Without waiting for G3 and the others, Xia Jinyuan led Yi Qian to the room they were staying in. He opened the door, pulled open the curtains, and looked outside. The room had a good view. If there was anything unusual on the street, they would be able to find it in time. After looking around, he turned to Yi Qian and said, "Qing Niao, check all the rooms carefully. See if there's anything unclean here. Don't miss any corner." He quickly contacted Z7. "Park the car and bring the large luggage up. The room number is 402. Z7 and the others entered the underground garage. In front of them was Maso, who was leading the way. He simply replied with an "okay" before hanging up. In a city where even basic communication was not guaranteed, where mobile phones were sometimes only used as alarm clocks, they used their own wireless communication system to communicate. If they kept talking, they would definitely attract attention. While waiting for Z7 and the others to come up, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Jian searched every inch of the room from the living room to the public washroom outside and even the carpet in the living room. They checked every inch of the room thoroughly. Less than 5 minutes after the phone call ended, his comrades arrived at the door with several heavy bags in their hand. Z7 walked in with his luggage in hand and a smile on his face. He teased the two men who were checking the ceiling, "I hope I didn't disturb your privacy." There was no problem with the ceiling either. In fact, Yi Qian did not feel like he was being watched when he entered the room. He did not feel anything when he walked into any of the bedrooms, but to be on the safe side, he still had to check them one by one. Chapter 25-24. Xia Jinyuan looked at Z7 and smiled at his teasing. "A little. Why don't we get a separate room for you?" He reminded Z7 not to joke in front of Qing Niao. Firstly, Qing Niao was a shy person. They could feel each other's warmth when they held hands. Secondly, when they entered the city, her eyes were filled with anxiety. She was worried about Chief Engineer Fu's safety. Therefore, it was better not to make such harmless jokes. Z7 snapped out of his daze and quickly shut his mouth. He stopped smiling. Xia Jinyuan ordered, "Go back to your rooms and check first. We'll come out to discuss the next step of our plan." He closed the curtains. Z7 tracked the chief engineer's whereabouts. There was a tracking device implanted in Chief Engineer Fu's body. This made things much easier for the Snowfield Brigade. Just like the previous rescue mission, they had to rely on the tracking device in Chief Engineer Fu's hands to find out that the chief engineer had been kidnapped. No wonder the military suspected that there was a spy. The interval between the kidnapping of Chief Engineer Fu was so short, less than half a year. There was a basis for their suspicion. 5 minutes later, everyone finished checking the rooms and walked out of their rooms at the same time. No one sat on the sofa in the living room of the suite. Instead, they sat cross-legged on the carpet. Xia Jinyuan sat in the middle. On his left was Yi Qian and on his right was Z7, who was tracking the chief engineer. The tracking device implanted in the body was controlled by the Military Satellite Control Center. After establishing a silent signal, Z7, who was holding a satellite communication device, made a short adjustment. He first cut into the country's satellite system to track the chief engineer's whereabouts. At the same time, he sent a set of decoded codes to the military indicating that he had arrived at the hotel safely. Xia Jinyuan had already drawn the layout of the room. There was no air conditioning, and only the sound of a fan could be heard. Yi Qian will be alone in the middle room. K7 and I will be in the window room. The rest of you will be in the corridor room. The 7 of you will take turns to rest and be on alert. Z7, contact the Major General and tell him about our next step. Also, ask where Pigeon is and ask them to come over and distribute the equipment as soon as possible. Pigeon and the others were the backup. There was only one strategic transport plane, and the people who had applied for the plane included the pilot, co-pilot, and 7 Special Forces soldiers, making a total of 9 people. Therefore, the Pigeons did not take the fastest shortcut, and it was impossible for them to swagger over. Logically speaking, they should have arrived in Mogadishu through the normal way of entry. As the commander of the entire operation, Xia Jinyuan quickly made arrangements for the day according to the location and layout of the hotel drawn by G3. After everything was arranged, he glanced at Yi Qian with a wolf-like ferocity in his eyes. Yi Qian and I will meet the people sent by the National Security Bureau. Give us 2 small-caliber pistols. After the arrangements were made, Z7 said in a low voice, Major General has sent a message. Everyone who was ready to act gathered. The screen on the handheld switched, and the face of the Major General appeared. Xia Jinyuan saluted and reported, reporting to Major General, according to your instructions, we have now arrived at our destination, Mogadishu. The Major General's dignified voice sounded, Did you encounter any trouble on the way? We did encounter some trouble, but they were all eliminated, Xia Jinyuan replied. Eliminated meant that they were directly killed. There was already trouble before they even started. The Major General nodded slightly and his expression became more serious. According to the information, 4 of our kidnapped scientists have arrived in Mogadishu and are being secretly detained. Z7 has locked onto their position and will immediately deploy. Chapter 25-25. Major General immediately informed them of Chief Engineer Fu's location. Through the screen, Major General's cold gaze swept across the young soldiers who were fighting for their country. He spoke to them in a calm and trusting tone. The National Security Agency personnel have arrived. He will be your eyes and ears here. Meet him as soon as possible. He will cooperate with you in this rescue mission. I'm giving you full authority to carry out this rescue mission, Q King. I'll be waiting for your good news. Remember to pay attention to your own safety. Everyone must return safely. No one can be left behind. After a brief communication with Major General, Xia Jinyuan's frown deepened. The difficulty of this mission was greater than any of his previous missions. The reason why people were afraid was not because they were afraid of people or things they knew, but because of the oppressive feeling of an unknown enemy hiding in the dark. If they were not careful in this mission, the consequences would be difficult to assess and irreparable. Looking at his comrades Z7, K7, G3 and Qin Miao, who occupied his entire life, Xia Jinyuan pursed his thin lip. How could they successfully rescue the 4 kidnapped scientists and ensure that everyone could return safely to their country? While he was still thinking, Z7 suddenly shouted, Signal disconnected. Q King, the chief engineer's signal has been disconnected. The tracking signal, which meant that the chief engineer's tracking signal had suddenly disappeared. Xia Jinyuan stood up and immediately lowered his head. He bent over and took the military laptop from Z7's hand. His thin lips were pursed into a sharp line as his fingers quickly typed on the keyboard. Strings of codes appeared on the entire satellite system through his fingertips. Yi Qian's back stiffened as she stared at him. Her beautiful face was cold and sharp. No, disconnected. The signal was disconnected. The implanted tracking device is in the muscle tissue under the rib. If it wasn't destroyed by a bullet, then the chief engineer must have destroyed it himself. It's very likely that he knew that he would be examined and prepared in advance. Z7 analyzed. He was an expert in this field and his analysis could be used as a reference. Xia Jinyuan signaled for them to stop tracking. That's right. I'm more inclined to believe that the chief engineer destroyed it himself. Fortunately, we have a rough location. It doesn't matter if the tracking device is destroyed. This sentence was directed at Yi Qian. He returned the laptop to Z7 and took the pistol from G3. He said to Yi Qian, who also took the pistol at the same time, "Let's go outside." They needed to go and receive the national security agencies. The chief engineer, Mountain Hawk. The two of them left the hotel, and the rest of their comrades made their own arrangements. G3 took out a bullet that had been polished until the bullet was transparent from his pocket and rubbed it gently with his fingers. When he had something on his mind, he liked to take out this bullet that he didn't know when he had put it on his body. He would rub it while thinking. None of the Snowfield Brigade's members, and even if they did in the past, they would have to Xia Jinyuan's. Translation. The room was filled with the sound of firearms and ammunition being checked. K7 glanced at G3, who seemed to have something on his mind, and lowered his head. He finished checking a few folding assault rifles and handed them to V8. The rest of them didn't say anything. They stood there quietly and went about their own business. After about 3 to 5 minutes, G3 directly put the bullet into his mouth. He made a gesture similar to smoking and picked up the folding assault rifle from the sofa. He opened the barrel and picked up the rifle. His gaze suddenly turned cold. He raised the rifle and aimed outside. He was trying to adjust the crosshairs of the rifle. Chapter 25-26. If you have something to say, just say it. Why keep it to yourself? The T6 who was reloading said. He said calmly, "If there's something, we'll face it together. No matter how difficult the mission is, we've already successfully completed it together. This time won't make a difference." After saying that, he raised his hand and lightly punched G3's shoulder. G3 adjusted his aim and stared at his comrade in front of him. He raised his eyebrows. "When did old T learn to care about me? It's a little rare. I'm flattered. You have a girlfriend who cares about you. Why do you need me?" T6 rolled his eyes at him and handed the loaded automatic rifle to K7 for reinspection. "But we're comrades after all. Seeing you with a bullet in your mouth, I can't bear to see you like this. I'm afraid you'll get sick from holding it in. Tell me, what's the matter?" Q King and Qing Niao were there just now, so it wasn't convenient for you to say it. Now that the two of them are gone, you can tell me what's on your mind, right? T6 looked over with a solemn gaze. They were comrades who had fought side by side, so they knew what each other's small movements meant. G3's mood was obviously because of Q King or Qing Niao. However, he thought it might be because of Qing Niao. The other three comrades looked at G3. A moment later, G3's usually hoarse voice was heard. "I'm a little worried about Qing Niao." When Z7 analyzed it just now, even her expression changed. The father he had never met before was one of the scientists involved in this rescue mission. This was cruel news in itself. Now that he had analyzed it, it was very likely that he was the one who had taken the tracker from the organization. What kind of courage did it take to stab a knife into one's hand and dig it out? K7 finished his work and picked up a combat dagger and a pistol. He raised his chin at V8 and walked towards the door without saying anything. The two of them needed to pick up the pigeons and take a look at the surrounding environment while T6 and G3 went to the hotel and its vicinity to get a better understanding of the environment. "Don't think about it. Qing Niao knows what she's doing. I have confidence in her." V8 left with his gun and comforted G3. T6 said, "I also believe that Qing Niao knows what she's doing. Don't think too much about it. Let's think about our future plans. Let's go shopping together." The environment in the hotel was not bad. He could take a look around. Those who came back later would rest for a while and wait for Q King to return. The brothers would go about their own business and perform their own duties, preparing for battle at any time. "Oh, by the way, the two of us can also have a meal. There's a restaurant next to the hotel, G3. Bring some shillings and let's fill our stomachs first. The four of them left one after another. Z7 was the only one left in the room. He couldn't leave. He had to guard his equipment and the satellite communication device. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian, who had left earlier, got on a motorcycle. Xia Jinyuan gave the address of a restaurant in Ala, and the African, whose hair was so shaved that it reflected light, immediately started the motorcycle and left the hotel entrance with great familiarity. In Maso, motorcycles were also the main means of transportation. After about 10 minutes, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian walked into a restaurant. It was a Western restaurant. The business was quite quiet and there weren't many customers. This was the place where they had agreed to meet Lin Feng, codenamed Eagle. Maso, which had entered the 21st century, had a short period of peace. Some restaurants that had closed down started to reopen one after another. This was one of the many Western restaurants that had remained open despite being affected by the war. The Western restaurant's business owner was said to be Chinese. As the two of them sat down, a child walked over. His large eyes revealed a maturity and experience that didn't match his age. He greeted them very politely in English. Chapter 25-27. At the same time, T6 and G3 also entered the restaurant next door to the hotel and sat down. There were very few people eating in the restaurant. In the huge restaurant, there were only 4 or 5 tables scattered around with people seated. T6 found a table near the window and sat down. As soon as he sat down, a male waiter came over with a menu and spoke in Alexi. "Would you like to eat? This is the menu. Please take a look first." T6 took the menu and lost interest after taking a look at it. He then passed the menu to G3. "What do you want to eat? You can order first." There was nothing delicious except for the beef steak that was still edible. Beef was high in protein and could replenish one's energy, but the taste was not delicious. There was no taste or quality to it, but as long as it had not gone bad, it was fine as long as it was edible. After all, it was beef steak, not rat or snake meat. In this country, it was already quite good to be able to sit in a restaurant. Outside, a black child in ragged clothes who was so thin that his eyes were protruding out was leaning tightly against the glass. His gaze fell on the beef steak that T6 was cutting, and he sucked his dark fingers tightly into his mouth. There was a look of desire in his eyes. T6, who had only eaten a small piece of beef steak, sensed someone looking at him and turned his head to look. He let out a soft F***ck, not because he was disturbed by the child, but because he was angry at the child's unfairness. They could still sit and eat a rather unpalatable beef steak, but here, the people of Maso had lost their homes and even their loved ones due to the war. They did not have enough food to eat, and their lives were in danger at any time. Therefore, the beef steak was not delicious. Be content. At least you have something to eat. T6 did not directly send a serving of beef steak to the child. Instead, he ordered 2 more servings when he was packing. When they walked out of the restaurant and returned to the hotel, the skinny black child followed them with small step. "Bump into me," T6 reminded G3. He could not give it to the child directly, so he had to give it to him in another way. When they were about to reach the hotel, T6 and the others saw 2 tall black waiters standing at the entrance of the hotel. They were dressed in white shirts and black suit. They were so clean that they formed a huge contrast with the child who was chasing after them. "Stop right there, kid!" One of the waiters saw the child and walked over quickly. He had a fierce look in his eyes as he chased away the child who was attracted by the aroma of the food. G3 seemed to be frightened and suddenly dodged towards T6 with a crash. The few boxes of steak that the T6 combatant was holding fell to the ground. 2 of the boxes even fell to the ground, and the packaging scattered all over the place. Seeing this, the child suddenly became very agile. Just as the black waiter rushed over, He quickly picked up one of the steak closest to him with one hand and rushed out of the waiter's sight like a monkey. "I'm sorry to disturb you, sir." The black waiter put away his ferocious expression and took the initiative to bend down and pick up the steak and paper box wrapped in foil. He didn't pick up a piece of steak that had fallen to the ground. "I'm very sorry, sir. Our hotel will bear your losses. I'm sorry for my rudeness." He apologized very sincerely, and G3's face gradually improved. G3 took the steak that was handed to him. He glanced at his hand and replied in stiff Alamine, "Do your job well." He left a little arrogantly. T6 took the initiative to extend his hand. "I'm sorry, my friend isn't in a good mood. Besides, he's very timid. It was my rudeness. Once again, I apologize to your friend." The black waiter reached out and shook T6's hand. He then took the initiative to withdraw his hand and expressed his apology again. Chapter 25-28. T6 waved his hand and magnanimously returned to the hotel. As he walked away, he saw the black waiter raise his foot and step on the steak that had not been picked up by the children with his leather shoe. The tip of his shoe rolled until the steak was filled with gravel before he retracted his foot. He would rather destroy the steak than leave it for the children who might come back to pick it up. The T6 combatant shook his hand lightly and toured the hotel as though he was taking a stroll after a meal. Along the way, he saw several figures flash by. Along the way, he even bumped into the hotel manager, a very tall black man who spoke fluent English. He took the initiative to lead the T6 combatant around the hotel. When he returned to his room, Z7 was already eating his steak, while T6's face darkened when he entered the room. "There's something wrong with the hotel," he said fiercely as soon as he entered. "All the service staff we've encountered here, from the receptionist to the restaurant manager, can speak fluent English. Maso is a country where the Maso and Ala languages predominate. In a place where there's constant civil strife, only the outer walls of their hotel have been damaged. There's no damage to the inside at all. This makes the problem even bigger. After walking around, there's no one staying in the hotel at all. These people don't look like they're here to make money from the war." When I shook hands with the waiters and hotel managers outside, I noticed that the calluses on their right forefinger and thumb were very thick. They didn't look like the hands of a restaurant manager or waitress, but more like the hands of someone who was used to holding a gun. When I met service staff at several places, the look in their eyes when they talked to me didn't look like those of ordinary service staff. Instead, they looked more like people who had undergone long-term professional training. This hotel. Who chose it? After talking for so long, the last part was the main point. The people inside were nothing to be afraid of. If something really happened, they would just fight it out. But why was this hotel chosen? G3 and Z7 seemed to be still digesting the information he had just told them and did not answer T6. T6, who had started the conversation, could not stop talking. Looking at his comrade's expressionless face, he became even more suspicious. "You all know there's a problem?" After he asked this, Z7 finally looked up from the computer and sighed. "There's indeed a big problem with this hotel, which is why we checked in. What are their identities and motives? As long as they don't offend us, we'll stay out of each other's business and live in peace. You've eaten and must be tired from walking around. Have a good rest first. Q will be back later. Our brothers will be busy." After saying that, he walked to the sofa in the living room by himself. He put his hands to the side and lay down with his eyes closed. T6. But after thinking for a while, "As long as they don't," a person muttered to himself. G3 took a look, shook his head, and walked to the entrance. He stepped on the opposite wall and leaned his back against the wall, in charge of guarding. The T6 combatant pretended to cough and rubbed his nose in embarrassment. He had not thought of the crux of the matter. If they did not come back, it meant they had lost contact. However, the one who did not come back was King. If something really happened, he would definitely think of a way to send a message back. Now that there was no news, either they had not contacted Lin Feng from the National Security Agency, or something had happened to Lin Feng and the two of them had gone to deal with it first. Chapter 25-29. Night fell and Mogadishu was shrouded in darkness. The night was quiet, but it was also dangerous. For the most dangerous city in the world, a black night was dangerous, and there would be no peace. There were no pedestrians on the street. Gunshots came from somewhere. K7 and the others, who were resting, immediately jumped up and rushed to the window that had a panoramic view of the street. They looked in the direction of the gunshots. In the southeast corner, the light from the gunshots and the flames from the ruins lit up the corner of the city. It's not where they went. G3 calmly looked away. If it's not, then there's nothing to worry about. The other three comrades looked away and closed the curtains at the same time. There was indeed nothing to worry about. The five of them returned to their original positions to rest and be on guard. The gunshots from afar did not make any of their expressions change at all. It was a common occurrence. They would not change their expressions even if it happened beside them, let alone when it happened in front of them. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian also heard the gunshot. At that time, they arrived at an underground bar, a hotel owned by the Maso pirate group. The people they were looking for would appear here. We always say that the people from the National Security Agency are as alert as rabbits, especially those who help people from the outside. They have the alertness of rabbits and the cunning of weasels. Xia Jinyuan took Yi Qian's hand and walked into the underground bar. The people who could find this place were mostly Maso pirates and foreigners who had passes to enter and leave Maso. Of course, no foreigners dared to enter the place where the pirates celebrated after their victory. It was similar to the bar. The dim environment, the flashing lights, and the deafening heavy metal music. This was a different world, a world that was not disturbed by the gunshots outside. Someone jumped on the table and shouted loudly, twisting his hips crazily. It was a strong black man with a skull flag tattooed on his chest. He was a pirate. Xia Jinyuan's sharp eyes quickly scanned the surroundings of the bar. He whispered to Yi Qian, "Follow closely behind me, load your gun, and be alert of your surroundings at all times." Yi Qian, who was looking around, nodded. She had never been to a place like this before. The music was so loud that it gave her a headache. She followed Xia Jinyuan to the bar, pulled out a bar stool, and sat down. Xia Jinyuan took out a pack of cigarettes and threw it on the counter. He took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a puff before holding it between his fingers. He did not have the habit of smoking, but the way he smoked was natural, carefree, and full of masculinity. Yi Qian could not help but take a few more glances at him. After blowing out a smoke ring, he raised his hand and snapped his fingers at the waiter at the bar. He said elegantly, "A cocktail and a dark beer, thank you." His attention seemed to be focused on the bar, while Yi Qian carefully observed the surroundings from the corner of her eyes. The lights in the bar were dim, so she could not see the faces of the people in the distance. The 10 or so tables in the middle were filled with people who came to get drunk. A group of bunny girls carried wine trays, wearing gaudy and sexy uniforms, shuttling through the crowd of drinkers. The surroundings were filled with coarse laughter and the fragrance of alcohol. Perhaps only under the stimulation of alcohol could the people who lived here truly feel the value of their existence. Only through alcohol could they release the little bit of passion and bravery they had. Chapter 25-30. And the most direct way to vent one's anger was through fists. Drinking buddies who had been drinking and chatting merrily just a moment ago could turn into fists in the blink of an eye. Yi Qian picked up his glass and took a small sip. "How is it? How's the taste?" Xia Jinyuan smiled and suddenly leaned over. "Just put on a show. It's high concentration, so don't drink too much. The cocktail had a strong aftertaste. Yi Qian, who had originally thought that it tasted good, took a sip and put on a show. He raised his glass and clinked it with Xia Jinyuan's dark beer. He said in a low voice, "Someone's coming. Up ahead, in the direction of 11 o'clock." Xia Jinyuan's tall and straight body did not move. One of his hands was still lazily resting on the bar counter, supporting his head. He picked up his dark beer with the other hand and took a sip. Wait for him to come. A man wearing a loose cotton robe walked over. He was not tall, about 1.72 meters. A ray of light swept past him and Yi Qian saw a very ordinary middle-aged Asian man's face. There were two tall black men beside him. One look and Yi Qian knew that they were bodyguards. From the National Security Agency, codenamed Eagle. Lin Feng? It's rare to see an Asian face. Miss, have a drink. He walked straight over and smiled, revealing the shrewdness of a businessman. Especially such a beautiful Asian face. What a surprise! If this was Lin Feng, Yi Qian felt that it was indeed easy to find someone from the National Security Agency. Xia Jinyuan swept his leg over and rudely and arrogantly blocked the middle-aged man's way. She's my woman. Get lost. She doesn't have the words "your woman" written on her body, so I have the right to treat her to a drink. For the sake of my countrymen, I can totally treat her to a drink. Lin Feng, who was a businessman here, laughed and said to Yi Qian, "I'm a Chinese businessman in the frankincense business. I haven't been back in China for a few years. I'm so happy to see my countrymen here." As he spoke, he held out his hand to shake Yi Qian's. Yi Qian glanced at him and said calmly, "I'm not used to speaking to people who are too enthusiastic, and neither are my fellow countrymen." After he finished speaking, he turned around to face the bar counter. He didn't seem to be paying attention to his surroundings, but his peripheral vision was very vigilant. Some people had already noticed this place, but forced trades were common in Danger City. Even if they noticed, they didn't investigate further. Xia Jinyuan stretched his arm, got up lazily, and reached out to hold Lin Feng's outstretched hand. Immediately, a hidden force was transmitted to Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng did not seem to be intimidated by it. He actually started to fight with Xia Jinyuan silently. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Time passed bit by bit, but the tightly clenched hands showed no signs of loosening. "Not bad, no wonder you dare to be so arrogant," Xia Jinyuan said coldly as he glanced at the other party. "You're not bad either. I'd like to see how long you can last," Lin Feng replied slowly, his eyes obviously probing. He rarely contacted the country, and when he suddenly received a mission, he immediately took action. However, when it came to the special forces sent by the country, he clearly told the National Security Agency that he needed to take a look first. The National Security Agency agreed, but he didn't know whether the military agreed or not. The two continued to exert strength in their hand. Yi Qian sipped her dark beer as if nothing had happened. The cocktail had a strong aftertaste, so it was better for her to drink less. 5 minutes later, Lin Feng's face twitched. What a strong grip, almost breaking his bones. Chapter 25:31. After another minute, Lin Feng couldn't hold on any longer. His face gradually turned red, his sweat increased, and his breathing became heavier. Yi Qian had a deep understanding of Xia Jinyuan's strength after working with him on missions in the past. The provocation from his compatriot was just asking for it. A man who was on par with Captain Xia. Big Brother was one of them. Lin Feng couldn't hold on any longer, but he didn't show any signs of stopping. Alcohol filled every corner of the bar, and any passion could be aroused. After another minute, Xia Jinyuan was still calm, but Lin Feng's face was distorted. "I admit defeat, he finally said, no longer insisting. Upon hearing this, Xia Jinyuan withdrew his inner force and let go of his hand. he said in a low voice, compatriot? Let's have a good fight next time. There was a deeper meaning behind his words. He turned to Yi Qian and said, I'm not in the mood, let's go back to the hotel. He paid the bill and left without hesitation. He's following us, Yi Qian reminded him in a low voice as he left the hotel with Xia Jinyuan's steady footsteps. After turning into a passage with graffiti on the wall, the two of them quickly exchanged glances, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across their eyes. There were people guarding the door. When they saw the two of them coming out, they nodded slightly, indicating that they could leave. The two of them slowed down. After walking out of the underground bar, they came to a dark alley. The two of them turned a corner, and Lin Feng, who was following behind them, hurriedly quickened his pace. Oh no, don't these two recognize me? The moment Lin Feng rushed out, Xia Jinyuan made his move. Lin Feng's reaction was also fast. As soon as he moved his body, Yi Qian attacked from the other side. Lin Feng's hands were held back by Xia Jinyuan, and a cold dagger was pressed against his throat. This action not only didn't frighten Lin Feng, but also made him feel relieved. National Security Agency, Lin Feng. Sorry for offending you just now. With the cold dagger pressed against his throat, Lin Feng smiled and said, Sorry, now let's get to know each other again. I really had no choice but to do that just now, please forgive me. As expected, it was him. Yi Qian lightly exhaled the foul smell of the bar. Xia Jinyuan loosened his grip and removed the dagger from his neck. Facing Xia Jinyuan, who had almost died just now, Lin Feng didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. He stretched out his right hand again. Lin Feng, code name Shanying, belongs to the National Security Agency. This time, I am ordered to fully cooperate with you to complete this rescue mission. Q King, Operations Team Leader, nice to meet you. After confirming her identity, Xia Jinyuan smiled and extended his hand. This time, he shook her hand politely. Comrade, Qing Niao, nice to meet you. Lin Feng extended his hand towards Yi Qian. Sorry for the offense. My behavior just now is considered a normal greeting in a pirate bar. If I were really polite, I would have been noticed. It's all right. Yi Qian shook his hand to show his understanding. Lin Feng, who had driven over, said, Get in the car first. We'll talk about it in the car. Any later and the streets will be even more chaotic. He knew that the two Special Forces soldiers didn't drive, and he had specifically reminded them to choose between motorcycles and walking. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian chose to walk. They walked all the way to the bar, and Yi Qian memorized all the routes they took. A jeep emerged from the ruins. Lin Feng's two bodyguards didn't follow and stayed in the bar. This time, Lin Feng was the driver, Xia Jinyuan sat in the passenger seat, and Yi Qian sat in the back. Chapter 25-32. Xia Jinyuan told Lin Feng the name of the hotel where they were temporarily staying. Lin Feng, who was driving, smiled and said, This hotel is indeed the safest hotel in Danger City. You actually found it. Amazing. He turned the steering wheel and drove through an abandoned 6-story building. He asked again, How did you find this hotel? It's neat, clean, and intact. It has glass that has been installed for a few years, Xia Jinyuan answered. He only said a few words to find the secret of a safe hotel. Glass that had been installed for a few years was quite difficult to find in this city. Even the best-tempered glass would be broken if a bomb was fired. The fact that it had been maintained for a few years showed that this hotel had not been affected by the war. As for why, it was unknown. Lin Feng also could not tell the origin of this hotel. It doesn't look like a hotel owned by a pirate group. I'm actually curious about its origin, but after so many years, the hotel is still a hotel. There's nothing else. Most foreigners who come to Maso for an adventure choose to stay here. It's very safe and hasn't been in trouble for a few years. If you didn't stay here, I would definitely recommend you to change hotels. Changing hotels in Maso at night is very dizzying. You also know that it's too chaotic here. Some hotels have long rejected guests. In a city without a sense of security, it was not strange to do anything. Yi Qian thought of the white man standing at the front desk. She thought of his action of holding a pen. After checking in, he very coolly threw the pen in his hand into the pen holder. At that time, she also thought that it was quite cool. When Lin Feng mentioned a hotel of unknown origin, Yi Qian suddenly thought of such a cool action. It was very similar to the action of throwing a grenade, but she did not say it immediately. The hotel was right in front of them. It would not be too late to say it when they reached the hotel. Beside Lin Feng was a philanthropist who supported needy children in Maso. He was an idiot who was invited by the TV station to donate a large sum of Maso shillings. At least, in the eyes of the white man who was still working at the front desk, the businessman he knew was a big idiot. In the hotel room, Z7 said to his comrades, "Pigeon and the others have arrived. Let's check out the situation first and wait for Q King to come back." At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the 7 members of Pigeon arrived near the hotel. V8 drove out to deliver all the equipment to them. Even the satellite communication equipment was ready so that the 2 teams could be on the move at any time. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening. A rhythmic sound came from the room. 1 2 3 3 1 2 3. G3 quickly walked over and confirmed it with his eyes before opening the door. The 7 Special Forces soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade sat cross-legged on the ground with Lin Feng sitting in the middle. From last night until today, the Bangon Special Forces were the ones who kidnapped our scientists. Banan guards, this is going to be troublesome. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but frown. They were the first group to engage in organized pirate activities in the Masua Sea. Yi Qian turned her head. This was also her first encounter with pirates. The Bangon Special Forces is the largest pirate group in the Masua Sea. They were also the first group to engage in organized pirate activities. They are very active in the area around Cancer Bay. They have led many hijacking and violent attacks on crew members. It is said that there are thousands of members in their group. V8, who was sitting next to Yi Qian, gently explained to Yi Qian. He saw the flash of doubt in Yi Qian's eyes just now. Chapter 25-33. Lin Feng said, although the Bangon Guards are the largest pirate group, their main forces and activities have always been in the Cancer Gulf. I suspect that they were hired by someone or an organization to kidnap our scientists. Lin Feng had been active in Masua, so he knew the situation there very well. He said with a serious face, I don't have the exact location of the captive, but I have the general direction. The inspection team's ship has been docked in the Cancer Gulf. The crew is safe for the time being. I've already made the arrangements here. The most important thing now is to rescue our scientists immediately. The situation will change if we delay. You and I must ensure the safety of the scientists. After he finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan gestured to Z7 to find the location where Chief Engineer Fu's signal disappeared. It was an electronic map, so all the directions were clearly displayed. You know the general direction, where is it? Xia Jinyuan asked Lin Feng in a low voice. Lin Feng didn't know that Xia Jinyuan had located the general direction. He pointed to a location about 10 kilometers away from where Chief Engineer Fu's signal disappeared. Here, Cancer Hall. Cancer Hall. Xia Jinyuan gestured to Z7. The electronic map zoomed in and a building appeared. You know this place? Yes, Andiken Auction House. It's a place where you can auction anything, including women and men. Lin Feng was indeed the eyes of the Snowfield Brigade. He could save a lot of time for the Snowfield Brigade. It's the territory of the merchant Andiken. All the pirates' dirty goods can be sold there. Z7 leaned over and whispered a few words in Xia Jinyuan's ear. Xia Jinyuan's deep and handsome eyes lit up. He turned to Lin Feng and said, Can we sneak in tonight? Tonight? Now? Lin Feng was surprised. There's an auction tonight, but we need to confirm the exact location of the 4 scientists. The person I asked for help hasn't given me the latest news yet. Xia Jinyuan stood up, a cold smile on his handsome face. No, we can go and take a look first. The exact location of the 4 scientists should be at the Andiken auction house. We must confirm it and act immediately tonight. Lin Feng, who received the unexpected good news, was stunned. He said, "What are you waiting for? Let's go tonight. How much equipment do I need to contact one person? Give me the number and I'll ask him to help me prepare it. For tonight's operation, we'll need heavy vehicles and a heavy machine gun team. If your friend is strong enough, can he provide a helicopter?" As soon as Xia Jinyuan heard Lin Feng's tone, he knew that the person he had contacted was powerful, so he didn't hold back. "I want a set of heavy machine guns to break through the encirclement. Also, prepare 2 rocket launchers for me." "If you don't have mortars?" "Did he? We are mainly short of heavy weapons. We brought light weapons directly from our country. Flash bombs, grenades, sticky bombs. I have all of these. Eagle, the only thing I lack is heavy weapons." Lin Feng swallowed his saliva when he heard this. "Boss, with this set of equipment, you can raze Andikan's nest to the ground. However, if he could save the 4 scientists, it would be worth it." After saying that, his expression turned cold as he said, "All right, I'll contact them now." Although they were shocked by the weapons Q King wanted, these heavy weapons were something that even ordinary civilians could see in a country that was in constant civil strife. Chapter 25-34. There's still. Lin Feng looked at his watch. It starts at 11 o'clock. It's now 8:30. Let's split up. If we can rescue the hostages tonight, I'll cooperate fully. Xia Jinyuan didn't expect Lin Feng to actually agree when he casually mentioned the weapons he needed. When he looked down at his watch, Xia Jinyuan's thin lips curled up slightly. One of the good things about the National Security Agency overseas was that they were able to get along well with people from both the underworld and the legal world. It was said that such candidates would enter the National Security Agency like special forces. Other than their skills, they would not be tested. Loyalty was the most important test. Their IQ and EQ were both very high. They also had to have a glib tongue. If they were outside, they would be able to make friends with all sorts of people. Lin Feng belonged to this type of person. From the information, it was known that he was a frankincense businessman here. He must have a certain level of strength to be able to come and go with Black Bodyguard. But the strength he showed now was shocking. After the shock, they felt relieved. If he didn't have the strength, why would the military ask them to contact Eagle Lin Feng first? Lin Feng was their biggest arsenal in Mogadishu. With heavy weapons and a helicopter, Xia Jinyuan's knuckles cracked. The Snowfield Brigade's Q King was ready for battle. The other special forces were also excited. Heavy weapons, heavy machine gun team, helicopter, this battle would be exciting. Yi Qian couldn't hide the smile on his face. Especially when he received Xia Jinyuan's gaze, a heavy stone in his heart was suddenly lifted. Along the way, she was very worried about the safety of her father, whom she had never met. When she entered the city of Mogadishu, she saw people walking on the streets carrying small mortars in broad daylight. She knew the difficulty of this rescue mission. Now, with heavy weapons that could increase the threat and helicopter reinforcements, the rescue mission was quite clear and more assured. The most important thing was, there was no need to waste time. As long as the location was clear and the identity was confirmed, they would act immediately. The problem of heavy weapons was solved. Every Special Forces soldier had a smile on their faces. But Lin Feng had a problem. How to bring these 7 people in? Lin Feng thought about it and asked, "Since we're going to act immediately after confirming the identity, you all have to go in. I'll make some arrangements and bring you in directly." As she lowered her head in thought, Yi Qian smiled and said, It's very simple. We can all be your bodyguards. This way we can go in. That's right. This was a solution. I was thinking too much. Lin Feng's ordinary facial features suddenly became interesting, and his eyes became sharp. He then pointed at the skin color of the 7 people. They're a little pale. Captain and Qing Niao are even paler. We have to think of a way to discredit them. Blackening one's skin was simple. Yi Qian took out an oil paint box from his equipment bag. As a sniper, it was normal for him to have some camouflage on his face. He took out the brown oil stick and slid it across his hand. How is it? It was pretty good. Everyone's face was dark brown in color. Just by looking at them, they really couldn't see any difference. This was especially true for the female soldiers. Every one of them was so tall. After they finished painting their faces and necks, they looked like authentic black people. The only flaw was that other than K7 who could speak Maso, the other team members could only speak Ala Yi Qian didn't turn into a black person. It wasn't suitable for her to turn into a black girl. She turned into a Middle Eastern woman. Her skin was more tanned. Chapter 25-35. Andheiken's auction usually started at 11 o'clock at night, so there was plenty of time. Everyone was done changing, putting on makeup, and deploying at 9:20. Lin Feng's side had also finished making arrangements. He immediately set off with 7 disguised Special Forces soldiers. Andheiken Auction House was an underground auction house in Mogadishu. It was a violent, bloody, cruel, inhumane, and undignified underground auction house. It could auction a woman, a man, or even a human head. Similarly, it could also auction off precious national treasures that were lost from national museums. Here, there were the Queen's scepter, the crown, the largest diamond, and the oldest golden mask. It was a paradise for the bidders. In the southeast corner of the city, the exchange of fire between the government forces and the militants had stopped. Such incidents happened almost every week. Maso was chaotic, but it was still a country after all. A country had a government and an army, but they were not that capable. The less capable government was provoked by the militants from time to time, and there were conflicts from time to time every week. They were already used to such days. The cessation of the gunfire did not stop a few figures who were briskly passing through the destroyed building. Someone whispered, "Keep up." A few dark figures rushed across the broken road and entered another destroyed building. This was the northernmost part of the city, and it was also the place where the buildings were the most damaged. In the faint light, the destroyed buildings were like building blocks that were not put together properly. People with obsessive-compulsive disorder would wonder if they could put the building blocks back together. The entire wall that had disappeared, the rusty steel bars that were bent ferociously, and the large piles of building debris created the illusion of the end of the world. "Brothers, don't worry. We'll be there soon to pick you up." All of a sudden, Z7's cheerful voice rang out from Pigeon and the other speakers. "Let's go in first with the brothers sent by the National Security Agency. We'll explore the interior while you guys set up a few infrared sensors to scan the outside. See if there's any basement or something like that." Pigeon and the others who had snuck in smiled when they heard this. They were equipped with Adam's Apple vibrating headphones, or mouthpieces for short. This thing used a non-traditional method of sound pickup. The sound it received was transformed from the vibrating throat sound system. As it was not transmitted through the air, it could completely eliminate the noise of the outside environment. However, it had a drawback. It reduced the volume of the conversation, but it could not completely eliminate all noise. However, it was quite suitable for the current situation. It was late at night, and they were moving forward in the dark. The surroundings were extremely quiet, and there was no noise at all. "Roger that. Infrared has been established. Beginning scanning." Sparrowhawk, who was in charge of the main communications, replied. Their electronic technology was on par with the Z7. They were experts in building electronic defense networks and electronic explosive. Z7 turned his head and said to Xia Jinyuan, "The pigeons have arrived at the Andiken auction house. The infrared sensors have been set up. We can know the results before we go in. We're just waiting for tonight." "Beautiful." V8 clapped and grinned. Yi Qian could not help but chuckle at the huge contrast between his white teeth and wolf fangs. They followed Lin Feng's car closely, turning corners, accelerating, turning corners, accelerating. Not once did they step on the brakes. Without the sound of gunfire, the city was really quiet. There was no sign of danger at all. Chapter 25:36. The car was still moving forward. V8, who was observing outside, looked at the desolate surroundings and said in a tense voice, "This place used to be quite lively. But in 1997, there was chaos and this place was bombed into ruins by artillery. Even after so many years, it still looks the same. That's normal. Who would want to rebuild their home when there's so much civil strife?" Z7 said coldly. "Survival, survival, and escape are the main focus of life. Rebuilding a home is only a desire in the heart." Yi Qian usually didn't participate in such topics as they were too serious. "Q King, do you see that small building in front? Let's go there first." The voice of G3 came from the car in front. Xia Jinyuan saw a building that was almost flattened by artillery shells from the high-beam headlights. "Roger." Lin Feng drove the jeep directly to the small building and made a detour before stopping. He walked up to Xia Jinyuan, who had already gotten out of the car. "My partner is waiting over there. Let's go and meet him." Xia Jinyuan looked around and asked, "Everyone?" No, let's see which 4 people are going with him. Just bring them there." Lin Feng trusted his partner, but Xia Jinyuan didn't. Hearing this, he said, "V8, get out of the car." He patted Yi Qian's shoulder. "Stay in the car. We'll go with Shanning." The car turned off and the lights were turned off. Yi Qian didn't get into the car. Instead, he leaned against the car door and held a pistol in his hand, ready to shoot at any time. Lin Feng saw his partner in the east corner of the small building. He said to Xia Jinyuan, "He's over there. Trust me, he's a trustworthy partner." Xia Jinyuan looked in the direction Lin Feng was pointing at. It was a tall and thin figure. He couldn't see what he looked like because there was no light, so he could only see the figure clearly. When they were far away, Lin Feng shone his lighter for a few seconds. Xia Jinyuan saw that the man was a local black man with a long scar on his forehead and a gray headscarf around his neck. He was wearing a linen shirt that did not seem to fit him well. It was so tight that several buttons in front of his chest were torn open. When the scarred man saw Lin Feng, a smile appeared on his gloomy face. When the fire was extinguished, his smile disappeared as well. Lin Feng had already glanced at Xia Jinyuan and introduced, "This is a friend of mine. He's trustworthy. Don't worry." Then he pointed to the scarred man and said to Xia Jinyuan, "This is Spar. I got a lot of information from him. It was also Spar who told me about the news about the Bangon Special Guards." No one introduced Spar to Lin Feng, but Xia Jinyuan smelled the fishy smell of seawater from him. This was a man who had lived on the sea for many years. Perhaps he could be called Pirate Spar. Xia Jinyuan calmly reached out his right hand and took the initiative to greet him. "Hello. Hello." Spar reached out his hand, shook it, and immediately let go. He communicated with Lin Feng in the Masa language. Spar said that around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, more than 10 people from the Bangon Special Guard pulled a large wooden cabinet into the underground auction house of Andiken in a truck. The guards were all from the Bangon Special Guard. Even the people from Andiken were not allowed to get close. As for what was in the wooden cabinet, Spar did not know. Chapter 25:37. Spar, identity unknown, Lin Feng's most trusted partner. As for what kind of partner he was, he did not tell Xia Jinyuan. The news he brought made Xia Jinyuan narrow his eyes. It seemed that Spar's identity was not simple at all. Standing in the ruins that were destroyed by artillery fire, and still had bullet holes, Lin Feng whispered to Spar again. K7, the only Maso who understood, raised his head and looked at the two people who were talking. He said to V8 beside him, "All of our heavy weapons supplier him, Spar." "You didn't hear wrong, did you?" V8 asked softly, full of suspicion. "I don't think he looks like a Maso who can take out heavy weapons." He was wearing flip-flops and a faded gold necklace around his neck that was as thick as a finger. The shirt he was wearing was obviously too small for him. The top two buttons on his chest were stretched open, but the button below his neck was firmly fastened. Below, he was wearing a pair of large flowery hot pants that were loosely worn. He was not judging him by his appearance, but he really did not look like him. "I didn't hear wrong. You didn't believe me," K7 said coldly and turned his head away from V8. T6 and G3 did not hear K7's soft words. They only saw Lin Feng patting his most trusted partner's shoulder and saying something anxiously in a grateful tone. Lin Feng said, "I'll have to trouble you with the weapons. When the time comes, put your stuff on my ship. I'd rather not load it myself than to load it back. Spar is very grateful for your help. Tonight, my 4 compatriots would like to invite you to the auction house. Later, I'll treat you to a cup of Chinese rice wine at my house." His voice was even faintly trembling at the end. He had said that the Antiken auction house was also a place where men and women were auctioned. If the identities of the 4 scientists were exposed, would they be auctioned off? Perhaps the Bangon guards would complete a deal with someone at the Antiken auction house, and the 4 scientists would very likely be secretly sent to other countries. Most importantly, they were military scientists in our country's missile research and development. Spar felt his fear, so he also patted his shoulder and said a few words. K7 knew he was comforting Lin Feng. "There is nothing to be afraid of. I will prepare all the weapons you need, including the helicopter, my friend. This is the first time you need my help. I will satisfy you." These were Spa's exact words. "Okay, then let's go," Lin Feng said to him, then turned his head and said, get in the car, quickly get in the car." As soon as he finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan, who also suspected that the 4 scientists would leave Mogadishu in an auction, turned around and trotted a few seconds faster than Lin Feng. He had been waiting for the conversation between Lin Feng and his partner to end, but now, he couldn't wait for even half a second. Hearing the sound of running, Yi Jian, who was leaning against the car door, immediately walked out and looked at Xia Jinyuan, who was running out. Xia Jinyuan was in a hurry. "Get in the car, get in the car!" Xia Jinyuan shouted at Z7 and Yi Qian, who were outside the car. Following his shout, a sense of urgency suddenly came. Xia Jinyuan jumped into the passenger seat first. As soon as he sat down, his voice was fierce, like a strong wind and rain. "The 4 scientists are very likely to be auctioned off. This is a suspicion. Maybe Bangon is still waiting for the deal." Then Lin Feng rushed to the driver's seat and started the car. He didn't even wait for Spa, who was slower in the front, to get in the car. He turned the car around and drove out, speeding towards the Antiken auction house. Chapter 2538. The wooden cabinets that were transported over most likely contained the 4 kidnapped scientists from our country. The timing was also consistent. Lin Feng was completely convinced that the 4 scientists were in the underground auction house of Andiken. He drove quickly and spoke very quickly. "There's no problem with the heavy weapons. There's no problem with anything you want. Spa will equip all the weapons within 2 hours. I asked him to help send all the heavy weapons to the vicinity of the underground auction house of Andiken. You can arrange for reinforcements to cooperate. Now we're just waiting for you to confirm the location and identity." This was what it meant to be a sudden torrential rain. Inside the car, because of his hurried voice, the atmosphere became especially tense. Even the air was distorted and compressed. In the end, it was squeezed into an invisible but exceptionally cold mass, ruthlessly smashing into the hearts of everyone in the car. Xia Jinyuan's thin lips were tightly pressed together like a blade. His eyes were filled with hostility, and he had the majestic power of thousands of soldiers and horses passing through. "Thank you." Thousands of words were condensed into these two short words. Lin Feng's face was cold as he replied, "This is what I should do. I'm a Chinese. No matter where I am, I must prioritize my country. Now 4 scientists have been kidnapped, and one of them is a military scientist who promotes the advancement of our country's military power. Even if I, Lin Feng, have to risk my life tonight, I will ensure their safety." This was our country's soldiers. Even when they were outside, they still loved and were loyal to their country. They were willing to sacrifice their lives for the prosperity of their country. Yi Qian's heart was throbbing. He would rather exchange his life for theirs, because the hostages they rescued were scientists who could promote the advancement of our country's military power. She believed that even if the hostages were not scientists today, but ordinary Chinese citizens, Lin Feng would still have such a fearless spirit of sacrifice. Then, Lin Feng seized the time to talk about some people and some things at the underground auction house of Andiken. Businessman Andiken rarely shows up. It's always a subordinate of his called Earl who takes the lead. Earl is a notorious villain. He has connections with many armed organizations in Mogadishu. This person is suspicious and cruel by nature. Kidnapping, drugs, and trafficking are all kinds of evil. Sometimes we even suspect that Andiken has been killed by him. Earl has a very good relationship with the Maso Pirate organization because he can help the pirates sell some goods that are hard to sell. At the same time, he can also buy good quality weapons and equipment for the pirate. Now, even the people from Andiken can't get close to the wooden cabinets. There are definitely 4 scientists from our country inside. The topic returned to the wooden cabinet and the scientists. Yi Qian was already gripping his pistol tightly. Z7 patted the back of Yi Qian's hand. "Relax. Now that we know the exact location, things will be easier. Pigeon and the rest will be on standby 24 hours a day. Once our equipment arrives, we'll just drive the car, activate the machine gun, and charge in to save them. Using the most brutal method to carve out a bloody path." Yi Qian was indeed uneasy, and his heart was extremely heavy. Young Sparrowhawk and the others had been paying attention to the plan and conversation of the assault team the entire time. They did not need to specifically pass on the message, as they already knew what was going on. After all the heavy weapons were taken care of, they were responsible for opening a path. On the way to the auction house, Xia Jinyuan deployed, "The 7 of us will fight our way out from the inside. The 7 of you will attack from the outside. First, clear a path for us." This road was the escape route for the 7 people who had killed their way out. Chapter 2539. After Xia Jinyuan finished his deployment, 7 cold and tough voices were heard at the same time. "Roger! Roger! Roger!" The car also arrived at the Andiken underground auction house. As soon as it stopped, a few black men with submachine guns looked over. They had very good submachine guns in their hands, but they were dressed quite casually. They didn't ask any questions and directly pointed their guns at them. If they weren't in Mogadishu, this posture would really make people faint on the spot. Spar stopped the car and didn't wait for K7 and the others to get out. He slammed the door with force and rushed directly in front of Lin Feng. He said some harsh words, and the few black men hurriedly retreated. They raised their hands to their foreheads and saluted in a non-standard military manner. Lin Feng got out of the car and adjusted his expression. He didn't have the fierce temperament of a national soldier like he had in the car. He returned to his current identity, a businessman with some status. Spar said to Lin Feng and led G3 and the others in. The black men with guns didn't dare to stop them at all. They were even a little respectful. The Andiken underground auction house was the same as the bar they saw Lin Feng in tonight. They were both built underground. The buildings above were destroyed, but the underground was intact. Stepping on the stairs, Yi Qian first smelled the smell of diesel. The electricity below was all generated by diesel, so it was brightly lit. On both sides of the underground entrance were black men with guns, and on their shoulders there was a bullet belt to ensure that there was enough ammunition. When they walked down the stairs, the lights were bright. The floor was covered with a high-quality carpet made of camel hair, and the walls were hung with handicrafts made of camel bones. Just the corridor was decorated very luxuriously and magnificently. In front of them was the hall. After entering the hall, there was an arched door with patterns. When they were about a meter away from the door, the closed door opened. A sexy black pearl in a colorful sand dress came to greet them. She knew Lin Feng, and Lin Feng also greeted her. Allah. The Maso religion believed in Allah, and some believed in God. During the day, the Masoa bandits Yi Qian encountered believed in God. The black pearl seemed to like Lin Feng very much. She walked up to him and took the initiative to hold his arm. At the same time, she greeted Spar. Lin Feng did not explain anything to Xia Jinyuan. Now that they were all his bodyguards, there was no need for an employer to explain anything to his bodyguard. The 7 Special Forces soldiers followed Lin Feng and Spar and successfully sneaked in. Outside, Sparrow Hawk could clearly see the internal environment of the Antiken underground auction house through the cameras they carried. Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian, Z7 and Lin Feng were the first to enter the auction site. Young Sparrowhawk's breathing was ragged. The auction site was like a boxing ring, with a high platform in the middle. The only difference was that it was surrounded by metal mesh. The stage was surrounded by seats. The entire auction house was decorated luxuriously, with gold as the main theme and red carpet as the carpet. When the two luxurious colors collided, it was easy to create a visual impact. The chairs for the employers were all high-backed golden chairs, which were designed to imitate the ancient pharaoh's golden chairs. The golden light was so dazzling that it blinded the eyes of the people. There were 4 major pirate leaders in Masua, and there were 4 golden chairs specially for the leaders to sit on. Other employers were not allowed to sit on them. There were a total of 12 high-backed golden chairs, which just happened to surround the entire auction house. Except for the pirate leader's golden chair, the other 8 chairs could be used by employers and people with status. Chapter 2540. When Spa walked to one of the high golden chairs and sat down, Xia Jinyuan and the other 7 people had already exchanged glances with each other. Although Lin Feng did not introduce his identity, he knew his sensitive identity without any introduction when he sat down on the golden chair. Lin Feng purposely slowed down his pace. Black Pearl, who was holding his arm, probably walked the guests to their seats before leaving with a smile. After she left, Lin Feng whispered, "Stand at the back. Don't leave when the operation starts. At most 2 of you should leave. Any more and it'll be too obvious." If they wanted to confirm whether the person in the wooden cabinet was a scientist from their country, they naturally had to act. Yi Qian and K7 were in charge of the operation. When the lights dimmed, the operation would begin. Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian, and Z7 sat down beside Lin Feng. Lin Feng lowered his head. "It's almost 10 o'clock, and there aren't any big shots here. Tonight's auction is probably a small operation. There won't be many or expensive items. Maybe we're overthinking things. If it's a big operation, there will be more people and more security. There were a lot of operations last month, and there were even some foreigners here. Spar isn't here, so I don't even have the right to enter." Lin Feng said the scene wasn't big enough, but in Yi Qian's eyes it was big enough. There were all kinds of people, young and old, men and women, white and black. At 10 o'clock sharp, a white man in a suit walked down. Bang, 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 bang. The auction hammer knocked on the table, reminding everyone that the auction was about to begin. Gentlemen, ladies, today's auction officially begins. I hope you can bid as much as you want. The white man's capable and loud voice rang in the ears of every buyer in the auction hall. The hall instantly quieted down. All the surrounding lights were turned off, leaving only the bright, glaring lights on the auction stage. The white man cleared his throat and his loud voice continued. He spoke very fluent Alaskan. Okay. Now, let's start with the first item of the day. This is a painting called Rita and the Swan. I believe many of you know who the author is. That's right. He's our great artist, Rita Vinci. After pausing for a moment, the white man continued, I know that some ladies and gentlemen might ask, isn't this painting lost? Why is it here? Yes, it was here. And I'm very sure that this painting is authentic. Now, the starting price of this painting is $1 million, and each increment is $200,000. Think about it, if this is the real thing that was lost, then its price would be far more than $1 million. Now is not the time to lose. 2 million. The moment of silence was quickly broken. Auction houses were like casinos in many cases. Apart from needing a large amount of financial support, being able to see the real thing was more often than not a matter of luck. The buyers in the auction house were like a group of gamblers who threw away their money recklessly. They would often fight until their heads bled over a single item. 4 million. 2 million. The bidding price continued to refresh, and in the end, it was won by a black man with an unknown identity at a price of 5 million. Yi Qian and K7 had already left without anyone noticing. Even Lin Feng did not notice. When 4 muscular black men came out with a large iron cage covered with red corduroy, the whole place let out a sharp whistle. Red represents a woman. The next item up for auction is a woman. Lin Feng turned his head and said to Yi Qian. When he turned his head, the Special Forces soldier, who was originally sitting next to Yi Qian, was already sitting next to him. And Yi Qian had already left without anyone noticing. Chapter 2541. Yi Qian and K7 had left the scene one after another when everyone's attention was on the painting. The place they entered was the entrance where the black man had taken out the painting. This entrance was the second entrance to the auction house. The first entrance was the entrance to the auction house. Originally, there were 2 strong black men with AKs guarding the entrance. However, when the painting was sent to the auction stage in the middle of the market, one of the 2 strong men followed and stood beside the auction stage. Yi Qian entered through the entrance while K7 split up. K7 was responsible for handing over the control of the entire surveillance room to young Sparrowhawk. The live feed of Yi Qian's actions was sent to young Sparrowhawk. When he saw it, his heart tightened. His eyes were glued to the screen, afraid that he would miss any action from Yi Qian. Go left. Look for the tunnel, young Sparrowhawk's voice came through Rice Colonel's earpiece. Yi Qian, with a scarf around her head, nimbly entered the tunnel on the left. According to the detector outside, there was something strange going on at 3 o'clock of the auction house. About 30 meters ahead, there was a metal reaction. It was normal for there to be a metal reaction underground, but it was not normal for the signal to be so strong that the detector's index shot up. According to Lin Feng's information from SPAR, the large wooden cabinet that the Bangon guards had brought over was in the basement of the auction house. Therefore, Yi Qian headed directly toward the basement. Even Lin Feng knew that there was surveillance in the basement. Young Sparrowhawk saw that Yi Qian had already entered the entrance to the basement and saw that K7 hadn't made a move yet. He reminded Yi Qian through Rice Colonel's earpiece, hide first and wait for K7's news. She needed to wait for K7 to make a move and then sneak into the surveillance room to have young Sparrowhawk control the entire auction house. This was all electronic warfare, and young Sparrowhawk could do it alone. Before K7 made a move, Yi Qian, who had sneaked into the tunnel, already heard someone coming toward her. Without time to think, she raised her head and looked at the nailed pipe above her. She stepped on the wall on the opposite side and used the force to pull herself up. She grabbed the pipe with one hand and her whole body was like a lizard as she clung to the ceiling of the tunnel. Two black men with guns walked past. Their eyes were straight ahead, and they didn't raise their heads to look up. Yi Qian held his breath, afraid that he would disturb her. "Qing Miao, I'm done here." K7's voice came from Mi Li's earpiece. He would cover the back so Yi Qian did not have to worry about being attacked from behind. "Sparrowhawk, it's up to you." Hearing that K7 had taken care of the surveillance, young Sparrowhawk didn't even reply. He directly hacked into the enemy's surveillance system. The whole process only took 2 minutes. "Done, Qing Miao." 2 minutes later, young Sparrowhawk's voice was heard. "Go ahead boldly, Qing Miao, I'll keep an eye on you. Remember to stick the infrared camera properly. If there's a problem with the surveillance camera, the infrared camera can be used as your eyes. It's double insurance." Entering the heart of the enemy's abdomen naturally required full preparation. This operation seemed rushed, but in reality it wasn't. When they were preparing the equipment in China, Xia Jinyuan had already thought of all the equipment that could be used. With a list, the military logistics department prepared sets of equipment according to his list. Since they suspected pirates, they didn't know which pirate group it was. When they arrived in Mogadishu, it was inevitable that they would have to go to some places where the good and bad mixed together. For these kinds of combat operations, the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade were all very experienced. Chapter 2542. Being able to complete a soul-stirring mission and retreat in the end depended on the preparation they had made in the beginning. Especially when it came to Special Forces immersion operations, the preparation had to be meticulous. Xia Jinyuan had prepared everything. Other than the heavy weapons that they planned to purchase from the black market in Mogadishu, they had prepared everything else that they could think of and brought them with them. To blend into the crowd and come into contact with dangerous people, they naturally had to use a USB headset to communicate. And if they were to enter and their comrades couldn't come out for a while, they would have to use hidden cameras and portable infrared detectors. Lin Feng had mentioned that he would bring them to the auction and use the equipment in the hotel room, so Lin Feng didn't have to worry about it. This was called, just in case. The Snowfield Brigade was the best in the country. It could be said that they stood at the top of the special forces in the country. Everything they thought about and the mission they were about to carry out had to be foolproof. They couldn't let themselves lose, and they definitely couldn't make any mistakes. Preparation before the battle was a prerequisite for foolproof and foolproof. With young Sparrowhawk entering the surveillance system, the entire search process became exceptionally smooth. Be careful, Qing Miao. After you enter the tunnel, you will come out of a double-decker elevator. Through the surveillance, you can see 2 tall men patrolling the elevator. Young Sparrowhawk was controlling the entire system. He hid in the ruins and told Yi Qian how to get there. And now, Qing Miao was facing how to get through the tunnel. There were armed black men patrolling the tunnel. Yi Qian heard footsteps but couldn't poke his head out to take a look. When young Sparrowhawk saw this, the scene suddenly turned upside down. Then, he saw the reflections of 2 black men appear on the screen. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Even through the screen, he could feel the tension at the scene. Yi Qian held his breath, and so did he. The black men passed by Yi Qian and walked behind Yi Qian until the sound of their footsteps could no longer be heard. The moment Yi Qian came down, K7's cold voice sounded. He said to Yi Qian, "I'm coming over now." Okay, I've already passed through a 20-meter corridor. Be careful, there are 4 patrolling black men with AKs in their hands. Yi Qian stuck close to the corner, and in front of him was the double-decker elevator. Young Sparrowhawk's voice was soft but clear. Someone is coming up in the elevator. There are 3 people in total. The person in front. Young Sparrowhawk zoomed in on the surveillance footage of the elevator and zoomed in again. There was silence for a few seconds before he said softly, "The person in front is holding a crown in his hand. It looks very luxurious." But now was not the time to discuss whether the crown was luxurious or not, but how Yi Qian hid it. Behind him were the footsteps of the 2 patrolling black men, and in front of him was the sound of the elevator doors opening and the footsteps of 3 white men exiting the elevator. Ching! Young Sparrowhawk, whose muscles were all tensed, didn't finish his sentence when he saw one of the lights suddenly go off. In that small area of darkness, where everyone's attention was focused on the light that suddenly went off, he saw Yi Qian roll down from the ground. She had chosen to move forward directly. 2 rolls and a straight leap, she reached the side of the double-decker elevator. In the painting, the extinguished light attracted the attention of these people. Everyone reacted very quickly. Except for the white man with the crown in his hand who did not draw his gun, the rest of the people turned around in unison and aimed their guns at the small dark place in a very professional manner. Chapter 2543. Yi Qian did not choose to use the bullet wrapped around the silver wire to hit the light in front of him. Instead, he used the length of the silver wire to flip over the top of the metal pipe while shooting at the lights behind the 3 people who walked out. The reason why he couldn't choose to hide on top of the iron pipe at the top of the tunnel in the same way was because this was a corner. A person's eyes would turn, and when there was a turn in the line of sight, there would be a problem of peripheral vision. Just like in daily life, there would often be people who said, "I think I saw something." The rest would be a vague impression from the corner of their eyes, but they would not be able to describe what they saw. But here, once you saw something from the corner of your eyes, unlike in daily life, you would definitely see it clearly. Therefore, Yi Qian's actions just now seemed particularly dangerous, but among all the dangers, it was the least dangerous. She used less than 3 seconds to make the most correct choice in the face of danger. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting beside Lin Feng, looked straight ahead with a slight smile on his lips. Now, let's enter the second auction. It's said to be a descendant of some noble family. There was a woman locked up on the auction stage. Yes, a woman. She had a head of wavy blonde hair, willowy eyebrows, blue eyes, a high nose bridge, cherry lips, and stunning facial features. She was only wearing a leopard print bikini and was full of wildness. Her skin was fair, her figure was sexy, and her legs were long and slender. Every part of her body showed off her beauty. The men below the stage whistled sharply. They were all crazy about the beauty of this stunner. There were also people who were not very interested. They were all here for the treasure and had no interest in living people, but that did not stop them from admiring her. As for the men who liked sexy stunners, their whistles got louder and louder. They could not wait to take the stunner into their arms and have a good time with her. Xia Jinyuan's gaze fell on the auction stage. He heard the voice of the white man who was in charge of the entire auction process. Believe your eyes. She is definitely worth having. She is a pure descendant of a noble family. She will let you enjoy the royal treatment. The starting bid for this item is $100,000. Each increment is $20,000. Begin. Ladies and gentlemen. 150,000. As soon as the bald old man finished speaking, someone started to bid. 170,000. 200,000. The frenzied bidding shook the entire auction house. In the end, this so-called noble descendant was bought by a fat black man. On the spot, the woman was sent to the black man. Faced with such a scene, Lin Feng smiled and asked Xia Jinyuan, "How is it? Are you used to it? It's all right. Xia Jinyuan replied indifferently. He wasn't used to it, and he wouldn't live this kind of life in the future. Besides, he wasn't in the mood for the auction, and whatever he bought wasn't his focus. The iron cage that contained the person was pushed off the auction stage again, and the gorgeous crown followed closely behind. When he saw the crown, Xia Jinyuan's body moved a little. He leaned forward slightly. The crown of Maria that disappeared. It seems that this place still serves as a place for the thieves who steal the precious culture of the National Museum. Yes, there will be. Last year, a famous painting by a painter from the Tang dynasty was auctioned. Even our country only has a copy of the painting. I was there, but I couldn't do anything. Lin Feng sighed and said helplessly. He turned and leaned towards Xia Jinyuan. How are they? Chapter 2544. Yes. Lin Feng's heart calmed down when he heard the two words. There was a big reason why the auction house was so popular and trusted by the pirates, and that was because the security here was very good. He asked this because he was afraid that the special forces from the country might run into trouble. He had already helped as much as he could. Getting into the basement was not something that he could help with. It was not something that Spar could help with either. He could only rely on the special forces from the country. As for how successful the mission was, he could not ask for details. It was not the right time to ask. To be able to get a successful answer was already good enough. The iron cage was pushed toward the basement. It was pushed to the double-door elevator. The black man in the elevator pressed the number 2. When the elevator descended, two figures followed. Young Sparrowhawk, who was controlling the surveillance system, said, "There are 2 floors in total. The upper floor has 3 basements, and the lower floor has 2 basements. There is a cupboard in the second basement. Go straight to the second basement." This was the most crucial step. It was to confirm whether the 4 scientists were inside the cupboard. Yi Qian and K7 did not wait for the elevator to reach the second floor. When they reached the first floor, they jumped to the edge of the elevator door. They inserted 2 daggers into the door, and in a few seconds, the closed door opened. When young Sparrowhawk said that they could press the button, the 2 took the elevator directly to the second basement. The whole process was filled with danger that would make one's heart race. These dangers could take one's life at any time, but for Yi Jian and K7, this was a danger that they had to face bravely. There was no turning back. There were 2 basements on the second floor. 2 of them were used to store the items that were going to be auctioned that day. The cupboard was in the basement on the right, and the entrance was guarded by 2 Bangon guards. If they wanted to go in, they had to deal with the 2 guards first. The 2 black men who pushed the iron cage into the basement walked out and took the elevator to leave. K7 pointed at the basement where the iron cage was stored, and Yi Qian nodded knowingly. There was no one outside. K7 pushed the iron cage out again. When he pushed it to the elevator door, the iron cage was blocked, and it could not be pushed into the elevator. The 2 bandits guarding inside came out and helped to push the iron cage in by using the sound of something striking from east to west. The moment the 2 of them came out, Yi Qian quickly turned sideways and entered the basement. The cabinet was not made of wood, but of metal. The metal cabinets were not fully enclosed. Instead, there was a ventilation grate on both sides made of 3 steel bars less than 10 centimeters long welded together. The light could not shine inside, so Yi Qian used a miniature torchlight the size of his middle finger to scan inside. There was someone inside, but only one. It was a Chinese man dressed in crew attire. When the beam of light shone in, the sailor's gaze followed the light and swept towards Yi Qian. At that moment, when he saw only one person, Yi Qian's heart sank, but he saw hope. She saluted the soldiers who were disguised as crew members. When the soldier locked inside saw the blurry face outside, he could only see clearly that the salute was a military salute. His eyes lit up with excitement. He pointed at himself and waved his hand, directly telling Yi Qian that he did not have much time left. He then pointed outside and made a gesture, indicating that the 4 scientists were not here. Chapter 2545. The camera was installed on Yi Qian's shirt, so young Sparrowhawk couldn't see what was happening inside the cabinet. He didn't ask either. From the salute that Yi Qian gave him, he knew that there was someone inside the cabinet, and it was a soldier. The 4 scientists weren't with the soldier but were sent somewhere else. He was weak, so weak that he couldn't even speak. Even the movement of raising his hand was difficult. He pointed at himself and used the last of his strength to raise his arm. He was drawing a simple map. He first drew a cross to represent his position, then he drew horizontal, vertical, and curved lines. Using my position as the coordinates, after you leave this place, turn left for 2 intersections, then turn right and head west. There's a large dome-shaped building, about 21 kilometers away from here. Leave now, it's too dangerous. They purposely placed me here to see if anyone would come. Leave now. His hand gestures and mouth movements told Yi Qian that the reason he was locked up here was because the pirates purposely did this. They wanted to know if they had been exposed and if the Chinese would send people to rescue them. Cunning, cruel, and treacherous, this was the Anshan pirates who would do anything. There was the sound of K7 talking to 2 pirates. One of the pirates was obviously impatient. He wanted to leave, but K7 pulled him back and said a lot of nice things. K7, who was cold by nature and spoke like an old man, normally didn't speak like this to his comrades. He spoke humbly and carefully just to buy more time for Yi Qian. Every time his comrades made a hand gesture, Yi Qian would repeat his hand gesture so that young Sparrowhawk could see and relay the situation to the rest of his comrades. He even drew the map that he had drawn for young Sparrowhawk. They purposely imprisoned the soldiers disguised as crew members here to see if anyone would come, and if the Chinese side would find this place. As young Sparrowhawk's tense voice traveled into everyone's ears, the special ops soldiers who were working with them outside had their eyes as sharp as swords, and their muscles were tense. Originally, they were certain that the 4 scientists would be here. After all, their previous speculation was well-founded. They didn't expect this to be a trap. In order to test the Chinese side, they used the Andiken auction house as a trap. This was not an ordinary move. Reinforcements retreat. The latest location ahead has been confirmed. Xia Jinyuan, whose eyes were slightly closed, ordered Pigeon and the others to withdraw from the periphery and head to the latest location to confirm. The original plan remains unchanged. The original plan remained unchanged. As long as the location of the 4 scientists was confirmed, the rescue would begin tonight. The rescue could not be delayed. When Yi Qian saw his last gesture, his eyes suddenly turned red, and there was a faint glimmer of tears in them. The soldier disguised as a crew member refused to rescue him. Before the 4 scientists were rescued, he could not move. And after the 4 scientists successfully rescued him, it was still unknown whether he would be able to survive until the rescue. From the way his legs were twisted, Yi Qian knew that his legs had been broken while he was still alive. If he didn't get treatment in time, he would be crippled for life. Take care, be safe, and go well. Yi Qian, who was leaving, saluted him again and mouthed, "Wait for us. You must wait for us." Chapter 2546. He grinned and the light in his eyes was like the most dazzling star. The light was incomparably resplendent. Going out was just as difficult as going in. Seeing Yi Qian salute for the second time, Sparrowhawk lowered his bloodshot eyes. Qing Miao, K7, head to the new location. Yi Qian and K7 left as quickly as they could when they heard Xia Jinyuan's order. The auction was coming to an end, and all of the treasures were successfully sold. The path to the basement was not as tightly guarded as before, so exiting was much easier than entering. A soldier disguised as a crew member was locked in a metal cabinet. Both of his legs were broken, and there were many injuries on his body. There was no way to save him. Yi Qian walked out with his back against the cold wall as he reported the situation to his comrade. Rice's earpiece was silent. The heavy atmosphere could be felt even though they were not face to face. "Come back, Qing Niao." Xia Jinyuan's cold voice was heard. "The auction is about to end." The heavy news pierced everyone's heart, and their faces were filled with a layer of murderous intent. K7 lightly patted Yi Qian's shoulder. "Get back to your positions." "Okay." Yi Qian raised his hand and gently wiped away the tears at the corner of his eyes. He raised his head, took a deep breath of the murky air in the underground auction room, and walked towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng already knew that the 4 science students were not here. His hands on his knees slowly clenched into fists. "I'll talk to Spar. He'll keep the heavy weapons for us for now. After we leave, we need to go to another place." Xia Jinyuan looked straight at the auction stage. "We will need them again. So we need Spar's help." Previously, Lin Feng did not know that the Snowfield Brigade had a new location, but when he heard this, he understood why they needed to go to another place. Hearing this, he nodded lightly and stood up to explain the situation to Spar. The pirate leader Spar and Lin Feng had a life-and-death friendship. Lin Feng had saved the lives of 54 people in Spar's family, including 14 of Spar's wives, 27 of his children, his parents, and his father's wives. After Lin Feng saved them, he didn't ask for anything in return. When he went out to sea, he sent Spar and the other 3 children to study abroad. To Spar, Lin Feng was a brother worth befriending. His brother had never asked him for help before. Today, he clearly knew that his brother was going to do something big, something that would very likely implicate him. But when Lin Feng asked for help, he didn't hesitate at all and chose to help. He also knew that the people he brought to the auction house were not simple. He did not notice when someone left his side. It was only when he inadvertently glanced that he realized that one of the 4 people who came with him was missing. If it weren't for Lin Feng, he wouldn't have dared to bring them into Andakan's auction house. Before the last auction item ended, Spar, Lin Feng, and the others had already walked out of the auction house. Because Spar was present, everyone's faces remained calm, as if nothing had happened. They hid their suppressed emotions very well, silently licking their wounds and completing their self-healing. In their line of work, they had seen too many comrades sacrificed. They could face the death of their enemies indifferently, but it was always difficult to face the sacrifice of their comrades. Chapter 2547. In front, Lin Feng and Spar were talking in low voices. Only K7, who was walking beside them, could hear them clearly. Spar reminded Lin Feng, "Be careful, buddy. Your friends are facing the Banant guards. Radner is a lunatic. You know that without me telling you." "Don't worry, brother. I know what I'm doing. Thank you for tonight. Help me prepare the things I want." "Okay." Spar saw that Lin Feng did not stop because of his persuasion and chose to continue helping this group of guys who looked like soldiers. Spar said to Lin Feng, who was walking him to the car, "No matter what, my life is very important. I hope that in the future, when I want to drink the rice wine at your house, I can drink it whenever I want." Lin Feng laughed and closed the door for him. He returned to the jeep that he had taken. Spar did not bring his own people out tonight. The car continued to send him back to the place where they had picked him up. Lin Feng shook his hand and said goodbye, then immediately got into the car. Spar did not leave immediately. Instead, he stood there and watched Lin Feng until the car drove out of his sight. In the wind, the black pirate leader's low voice could be heard, "God is Allah." He prayed for his friend's safety. In the car, Yi Qian had already drawn the map in his mind and the landmark buildings. Lin Feng saw the big dome of the landmark building and exclaimed, "The territory of the Banant guards. It's a dangerous place." Even if it's dangerous, we have to go in. Xia Jinyuan glanced at Lin Feng and pursed his thin lips slightly. He said in a low voice, "Shanning, stay here and wait for us." Since it was dangerous, he could not let Lin Feng go. Lin Feng refused and gave his reason. "This is the territory of the Banant Guard. It's also the favorite place of Radner, the leader of the Banant Guards. I've been there with Spar. If the 4 scientists are really here, then I'm guessing that they're locked up in their prison. It's not easy to get in here, but I can take you there." This was the most convincing reason, and also the reason why Xia Jinyuan could not refuse. "Besides, I also know where to go. I will avoid the patrols of the Bonan guards and enter the city," Lin Feng said softly. He glanced at Yi Qian and said, "There's a woman in Radnor who is Spar's mistress. Spar had an affair with her in a wine cellar. And in this wine cellar there's a big wine barrel that never has any wine. Enter the barrel and climb to the innermost part. Who would have thought that such a huge project would be needed to dig a secret passage from the wine barrel directly to Radnor's territory? T6, find a vantage point for sniping and cooperate with the operation team. Z7 remains unchanged. If there are any surveillance cameras, take care of them directly. G3 and V8 are responsible for covering the rear. The rest of you sneak in." Then, he contacted Pigeon. "Pigeon, your reinforcement team's arrangement remains unchanged. Be ready to help us at any time. Once you succeed, drive the scientists to the helicopter landing point immediately." The helicopter landing point was in Spar's territory, so they needed Lin Feng to lead the way here. This was why Xia Jinyuan agreed to let Lin Feng go. As long as the rescue was successful, Lin Feng could lead the way and leave immediately. In a chaotic place with fierce pirates, even a pirate leader like Spar could not get any accurate information. It was enough to show that the Banant guards were stronger than Spar. V8 patted his chest lightly and said to T6, who was sitting next to him, "I previously said that I was going to the market to get some information. Fortunately, Q King denied it. Otherwise, Radnor would have found out before we even took action." Chapter 2548. The National Security Pirate Group was very powerful in Mogadishu, and they had spies in all walks of life. Once Xia Jinyuan wanted to ask for information, Xia Jinyuan dared to say that Radnor already knew before he even left. Therefore, when V8 suggested that they could go to the city to inquire, Xia Jinyuan directly refused. They couldn't go outside to inquire, and they didn't even dare to reveal the slightest bit of information. If the address this time was not wrong, then they would use the location of the signal as the center and spread out to search. When they really found the location of the 4 scientists, they would immediately take action. On the way there was not much communication in the car. Without Spar in the car, even Lin Feng's face looked a bit gloomy. Yi Qian kept looking outside. The civil war in Maso had not stopped since 90 years ago. Although there was a national government, the government was dispensable, and its ability to control the armed forces and pirates was quite weak. Looking at the broken walls covered with bullet holes, then looking at the garbage and rubble. It was a place full of scars and devastation. Such a place made people feel terrified and just wanted to leave as soon as possible. They had arrived at their destination and began to explore the situation outside in order to find the fastest way to leave. Xia Jinyuan and the others arrived at Radnor's bar through the barrel. There were too many restless young people looking for excitement in dangerous city. During the day they could carry guns and swagger through the streets, but at night they liked to hang out in bars. There were very few bars here. The businessmen who could open a bar here either had a good relationship with the armed forces or had a good relationship with the pirate. This bar was Radnor's own bar, and only his own bar dared to operate in his own place. He dared to operate a bar that could easily cause trouble next to his own place. From this, it could be seen that Radnor was an arrogant and overconfident pirate leader. Of course, he also had the capital to do so. Yi Qian entered the second bar that night. He walked through the aisle and into the disco hall. What greeted him was a scene of debauchery, drunken revelry, and noisy DJ music filled every corner. On the round platform in the middle of the disco hall, there were 3 beautiful women in revealing clothes. They grabbed the iron rod on the platform and flirted as much as they wanted, teasing the group of passionate men below. Tanned bunny girls dressed in sexy attire carried drinks as they shuttled back and forth among the men and women who were filled with hormones. Enner's subordinates gathered in 2s and 3s with guns in their hands and observed from different corners. The 8 of them entered the disco in groups of 2 and found their seat. They did not act immediately as they still needed to wait for Lin Feng's news. After sitting down, they ordered a glass of beer and slowly tasted it. Tong Linfeng chose a seat on the right side of the bar. He held a glass of whiskey and spoke to the bartender. 5 minutes later, everyone saw Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting with Linfeng, point to the second floor. Then, they all walked up to the second floor with beer glasses in hand. The second floor was a better place to watch the performance below. When a group of black pearls began to twist their waists and dance erotically, the entire disco went crazy. Even the armed militants could not help but move their bodies to the rhythm. The 8 of them avoided the militants and entered from the second floor. They went to the back and stepped on the iron ladder to enter the wine cellar. Chapter 2549. Just as they entered the wine cellar and closed the wooden door, a deafening explosion came from above, causing the ground to tremble. Dust fell from the ceiling. In less than 3 seconds, the 8 of them were covered in dust, especially the top of their heads, which were covered in a layer of white dust. Are we being bombarded from above? V8's hand was still on the door lock. When the sound of the cannon came, his hand quickly bolted the door to prevent anyone from outside from coming in. G3 pressed his ear against the wooden door, but there were no footsteps. No one was coming to the wine cellar. G3 V8, bring up the rear. The rest of you, go to the wine barrel. The explosion outside made Xia Jinyuan tense up. This was not a good thing. The bar was Radnor's territory. Now that someone was attacking Radnor's territory, the security inside would be tightened. They might even move the 4 scientists who were already inside. This was the last thing he wanted to see. Once they were moved, they would lose the news of the 4 scientists again. With the bombardment this time, the cautious Radnor would be even more cautious. They would not show themselves easily. Even if they wanted to dispose of the 4 scientists, they would do it secretly. No matter what the plan was, it was a very bad plan. Xia Jinyuan was the last to climb into the wine barrel, followed by G3 and V8, who brought up the rear. There were still explosions from above. It seemed like someone was attacking the bar. When they were halfway through, everyone could clearly feel the tremors coming from above. Get your weapons ready. It's probably a bit chaotic outside. Yi Qian, who was at the front, reminded them in a low voice. When they were halfway through, they could clearly feel the tremors coming from above. Enner's residence was probably under attack. Yi Qian was petite and agile. He crawled much faster than Lin Feng. When he was about to reach the exit, there was a sudden rustling sound in front of them. Then, a slender woman's leg with a wheat glow fell from above. There was also the sound of a woman cursing softly. Lin Feng wanted to remind Yi Qian that the woman who came down was Spar's mistress. Yi Qian's movements were like a leopard pouncing on its prey. He pounced on the woman, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her down hard. Then, he dragged her towards him. Ah! The woman cried out in alarm, and then there was no more sound. Yi Qian dragged her to the ground, and the woman's lips were covered by Yi Qian. At the same time, Yi Jian lifted the woman's gorgeous clothes and covered her head. The woman's head was covered and she couldn't see what was in front of her. At the same time, Yi Qian used the edge of his clothes to gag the woman, then tied a dead knot behind her head. She could not see clearly what was happening in front of her, nor could she scream. She could only make muffled sounds from her throat. Lin Feng didn't speak. He couldn't speak. If the black woman recognized his voice, it would bring trouble to Spa. He saw Qing Niao, who was pouncing on the woman, turn her head and make a kill gesture above her neck. She asked him what he meant by kill. It was better to stay. Kill. Lin Feng swiped his hand across his neck. For safety's sake, he had to kill her. The woman was Spa's mistress. She was a promiscuous woman. If he kept her alive, she might tell others what happened today. Moreover, this woman was not a kind person. Her hands were stained with the lives of several people, including 2 children. There was no need to keep her alive. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.